The inquiry at land to the west of Wyreston Road, Ashbourne, Derbyshire. Welcome to the inquiry, Mr. Carr. So we'll be hearing evidence from you today and then hopefully getting on to drainage and flood risk. Before we do, can I just check if there's any news on the timetable, specifically in respect of ecology or housing land supply evidence?
Ma'am, Mr. Hunter and I have been discussing ecology. A note has been asked for about the sort of one of the solutions that may be provided for drainage, foul water in particular, and whether or not that impacts on ecology issues. We have agreed to prepare a note to confirm the position. That I'm hoping will be done by the end of today. And then it's over to the council really to decide whether or not they want to cross-examine Mr. Hoy, because if there's no cross-examination or you don't have any questions for him, ma'am, then I'm not intending to call him. I'd like to take his evidence as read.
So the note is in respect of ecology, is it?
Well, it's about the provision of additional storage on the site for foul water and where that will be located and how much space that would or wouldn't take up. So the council's asked the question, well, what would be the impact on ecology? Because it's in one of the ecology areas. And we've, out of the inquiry room, we've confirmed the position to Mr. Hunter. But Mr. Hunter has asked for that to be put into a formal note, which we are happy to do and submit to the inquiry, because if he can save us time, then I'm fine with that.
So it's really just some information that if everybody's happy with, then we won't hear from Mr. Hoy.
That's my understanding, ma'am.
Ma'am, that's right.
And does it impact on drainage evidence at all?
Well, it does. I mean, the reason for it is, I mean, in short, as in some of Mr. McKellar's evidence, it is, even if your concerns are right, there are solutions to them, including this temporary storage solution, which we say, well, OK, we've got new details of that. We need to be satisfied there aren't any implications that might be problematic, which is unresolved at the moment.
OK, so, but as the day goes on, it may resolve itself. OK, all right. So you're working on that behind the scenes then anyway. OK, lovely. All right. OK. Anything else before we start today?
Yeah, Ma'am, there's two documents. One of them, I think, has been sent to PINS to be added to the inquiry documents, and it's another extract from the PPG on water supply and wastewater, so relevant to drainage later on. I've got a hard copy of that if you want that of you. Yeah. And the other one is for Mr. Carr, which is one of the issues we'll address, as I said with Mr. Jackson yesterday, is whether the tree line policy in 136 of the MPPF and what tree line means. I've got a dictionary definition I'd like to put to Mr. Carr. So I thought, in fairness to him and everyone else, I ought to print that off. And if you don't mind, Ma'am, I'll hand that up to you now. There's a copy being given to my little friend.
Ma'am, I don't have any in principle objection to either of the documents going in. With respect to the PPG, obviously, I don't know where we're going to in it. So I might need, after Mr. Bowles given evidence, I may need to discuss with Mr. McKellar, but before I cross. But hopefully I won't need to.
I think I can can explain that to my little friends outside the inquiry room, but probably before Mr. Bowles gives evidence. And the way, again, we spoke this morning about the programme, you've raised that. What appears likely to me is that Mr. Carr is going to take the morning, and then Mr. Bowl would give evidence in the afternoon, and we may get on to Mr. McKellar in chief, and then cross-examination in the morning, and then if we get there, we can see what that means we can do with the rest of the programme.
Is there any news on housing land supply?
No, I don't know whether Mr. Roberts is available to speak to Mr. Hayes about this. If he is, then I'll pass the message through Mr. Robson that they should discuss that.
We can certainly take instructions. I mean, Mr. Denning is saying Mr. Roberts isn't available because he's not available for personal reasons. But Mr. Denning is stepping into his shoes, and we have been in contact with him. I'm sure that he would make himself available if there's an opportunity to try and get this sorted out.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, if there's nothing further, then let's begin with Mr. Carr then, Examination in Chief, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, Mr. Carr.
Morning.
I'll just introduce you to the inquiry. I've lost my tab for your CV. Classic. Bear with me. Here we are. You are Michael Carr. You're the Director in charge of Design and Master Planning at Pegasus Group. You've got over 25 years' experience of designing the built environment. You have a first-class Bachelor of Arts honours degree, and you received a distinction for a subsequent graduate diploma in landscape architecture. Following that, you studied for a graduate diploma in urban design. You are an affiliate member of the Royal Institute of British Architects, and you're an approved urban design group recognised practitioner. You're also a member of the Gloucestershire Design Review panel. Is that all correct?
Yes, this is.
Pegasus provides design consultancy services for a variety of developments, including residential, commercial, leisure, education and retail projects throughout the UK, and you're regularly asked to present evidence, and that's informed by your project work, and that involves from design, from concept to implementation. You've worked on a number of projects that have won RTPI awards and Building for Life accreditations. The Housing Minister has in the past commended 2 developments you've been involved in: the redevelopment of the former airbase at Hereford Park and Spirit Quarters, Coventry. Is that all correct, Mr. Carr?
Yes, it is.
I'm grateful, thank you. So let's start at the beginning. And if I could just invite you, Mr. Carr, to provide an overview of the appeal scheme in design terms. I see you've got the big sort of aerial photograph up. That's the best way we could find to get it on a board. So I'll hand over to you, Mr. Carr, and let you talk us through the scheme.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, homemade display boards. I think I just want to explain the design in sort of 3 key headings. The first one is environment. So that's what is the site, what's it got to offer. Principal things for me are the levels and dealing with those. And whilst they might be a challenge, I also think they're an opportunity. They are very Derbyshire. So inherently, whatever you work with on that site is going to have to respond to the levels, and working with those, stepping up and down of built form, gives you the character that you're looking for in one large amount. So that's the first thing. You can't avoid that. It's inherent in the site and should be embraced. We then also have some significant areas of landscape, treed areas, particularly what I would call the dark green is my buffer to the A52. It's not the grass beyond it, it's the tree-lined southern edge to the A52. So that's there, that's kept, and it's pulled development away from that to allow that tree belt to be kept.
But just to clarify, that's outside of the site boundary?
Yeah.
Yep.
We've also got vegetation. There's a key tree, T7 I think it is, just in this location here. And we've also got the benefit of the open space from the adjoining Red Road scheme to the north, and finding a way to address that and to integrate it. We then, in terms of the environment, we have things that we need to watch for across the development area, and that was brought out in the iterative design process. Getting to know the ecology has been part of the process. So the far western side of the site is left development free, and that contributes to your 56% green space that's agreed between us.
Just on that point, Mr. Carr, with respect to the evolution of the scheme, and you obviously refer to the ecology being taken into account as part of that iterative process, can you just talk us through the change in quantum?
Yeah, initially I think there was a 150 dwelling scheme that was put in. I think actually there was a bigger scheme than that at the very start, and then that's now down to the 87 dwellings that we now see. So what I can see is nobody's been what you might call greedy with the development area. They've been pulling back in an iterative process with the council to the development that we now see at inquiry. And I have in my appendices, in my main proof, CD 7.10, set out the key 7 stages in that design development process.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that the 150 was the pre-app, and then it went on from there. Thank you. Please do continue. I know you were starting to talk us through the iterative design process and getting to know the ecology, so I'll hand back to you on that.
Yeah. So that's a couple of key drivers. You've also got views out from the site. There are a couple of streets that align with views out across to the wider landscape. And you've also got what's there at the moment that we're looking to improve, that back of gardens, the timber fence that we've looked at previously, looking to improve that by putting a new development tier in front of that so that you arrive at what you might call a fair face now in terms of built development rather than the back of the garden boundaries in that location particularly. And the next thing in the 3 structuring elements, as you might call it, would be movement, and we have the site shape we have. We also need to get access. We don't need a through road. There's no need for that in highway terms. There's no need for all that extra tarmac to connect through. But what we do have is a central spine road, but that's not to say that it doesn't have any character. It has the character in 3D of moving from higher levels, dropping down to the lower level plateau, and then across. We also have a changing scene along that street where you have initially development pulled back on the south side to create a kind of funnel as you move in. You then capture some existing trees at a number of points, and these transition points are marked with a kind of calming device in the middle of the road. So there's a sort of area there on each of those transition points, this point here, this point here, and this point here. And you can see those in the additional 3D views that we've had prepared in my appendix CD 10A, if we want to just turn those up if we may. So this is
I think we went to these yesterday in passing, didn't we, with Mr. Lally? But do please. So we've got view A through to C.
Yeah.
You want to talk us through those?
And just to explain where they are, because there's a lot of plans and keys and where things are located might need just bringing out to be clear. So view A is what I would call the first sort of transition point as you enter into this triangle open space, which we address the southern half of. And this is kind of one of the things about the movement isn't just getting people to their houses, is actually creating a character as you move down the street and integrating.
Can I just stop you for a second? Sorry, Mr. Carr. Ma'am, we have some spare, smaller versions of the plan that's on the board. Would it be of any use for you to have it?
I don't think so.
Okay. That's fine, no problem. I just wanted to double check because I was just aware that you might not quite be able to see it there.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
I know where you are.
Good.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a really useful way to present evidence, I think, on this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like pointing at a plan is way better than words, isn't it?
Absolutely. Great, lovely. Sorry, Mr. Carr, I'll let you carry on.
Yeah. So it's the changing scene as you move down that street. This first one is what we call the arrival green in the DAS. It's a view up to the Red Rose scheme, and you kind of join hands with the Red Rose scheme. You are completing, in my view, the southern half of that triangle of space. So that frames that space and gives you the glue between the two different developments, the proposed one and the Red Row one that exists at the moment. And there's a play area, I think it's a lap just at the southern half of Acorn Drive. So you're kind of introducing people into that area, and then they could use that as a link between the two. So that is that location there, looking across that, and you can see here, I'll come back to tree lines, but there's a lot of trees there, And there are the 40, I think it was 46 or 47 trees down that street. As soon as I've mentioned it, I will just highlight that whilst there is a condition, the proposed planting plans at the moment do, in the key for the trees, show heavy standards, and that's a larger than normal sized tree. Usually my developer friends don't do heavy standards as a tree size, so instantly your trees are giving you more than they would have done because they've got more instant size and impact. And on the trees as well, in Ashbourne, I don't see an avenue. I don't see a lot of trees on both sides of roads. I don't think that has been shown to you as nobody's evidencing to you from the other side that an avenue with trees on both sides is an archetypal Ashbourne. So that lack of there's no need to do an avenue down both sides of a street to feel like you're part of Ashbourne. In fact, you probably would be the opposite. You would feel like you weren't part of Ashbourne because it'd be such an alien feature to have. So archetypal Ashbourne for me is actually arguably not a lot of trees on streets, but there are some particularly more recent and peripheral developments, kind of akin to ours, where you would have trees at least on one side. On our scheme, they alternate to the south side, to the north side. To the north side in this location where we are on our travel at the moment is in open space, so you get a chance for them to develop a full wide canopy, unimpinged, not bothering the neighbours. There's nobody on that side of the road so trouble with that tree-lined avenue. You then move through to some trees in fronts of gardens, and we saw yesterday that they're in the public realm, those trees. They're not going to be the people that, when they move in, if they were looking to take them out, they can't, because the management company, they're not their trees to take out. The management company have got control on those and to manage them and keep them tidy. We then, having moved over the sort of second transition point where the hedges cut through and you can see those more mature trees, so it's not just the trees you're planting, it's the trees that are already there in the hedgerows and the existing tree at the far end. We move to view B as we come to the play area. So that's view B in CD10A with the play area on the slope. Again contained with planting to the northern edge, so there is an avenue that's on the open space side of that road. And then you move on and out. You will at this point see the view out to the open space to the south of the existing pond for the Red Rose scheme. So you're inheriting open space all the way down the road. It's not just left and right, it's the view that you see down the end of the road where you'll be primarily looking. So to get all the benefit of the green space at the end by not blocking that view with built form, I think is also very noteworthy, and leads me to the final view in the pack of additional views in CD10A is view C, and that's where you arrive at that open space on the western side of the scheme. So movement, there are some sort of secondary movement links, as I referred to earlier, where you've got small scale, intimate little private drives that lead out, and they'll inherit the wider landscape as part of their character, and or the tree belt to the south along the A52. So I think therefore you have the frontage of the built form along the street, which is the third element of my three things: the environment, the movement, and then the placemaking that's contributing to character. So cladding the street that you've already got with the trees, you're cladding it with built form. That built form also reflects what you find in Ashbourne, which is a kind of developed over time character. This isn't a Georgian matched houses all the way down. It has a charm that is predominantly kind of incremental development over time, and that's been expressed, I think, in the design statement and in my text and in what we see there when we go to site effectively. It has to pay a little bit of deference to the adjacent schemes. There's the Red Row scheme, for example, but I think our detailing is a step up from Red Row. It's that bit more Derbyshire than the Red Rose scheme, and nobody's complaining about the Red Rose scheme. It just, I think, working with the council officers, which is actually brought out in Mr. Laley's evidence, that you can see there is an evolution of polite, normal housing, which Ashbourne has. And I think that polite, normal housing is there's only so many ways of doing a 2-bed or 3-bed or a 4-bed, detached terraces and semi-detached. We also have bungalows here. And we've also got some split level, which seem to have been missed yesterday, but there are split level dwellings, which is a way of dealing with the levels, which I can bring out if anybody needs to know where they are, but there are a number of sort of types that are using on the split level approach. So the character brought through what we would see as well-balanced elevations with 2 brick types using render and the grey tile, which replicates the Shropshire blue clay tile, which actually is more grey than blue. We would then have multi-pane windows. We've got headers and sills that are expressed. We've got the vernacular inspired way of the houses stepping down, which you can see in some of the original DAS drawings. The houses aren't all on a flat level, they step down, which is a very Derbyshire thing. And then you've got some projecting cables. You've got the full hipped roof on some of the buildings, but then others are just straightforwardly pitched. You've got clipped eaves, which I think is a step up from some of the Red Road development. That clipped eaves is a kind of local thing. It's more of a traditional detail. And then you've got the bay windows and occasional chimneys. Again, I don't think the Red Road scheme had the chimneys, but in discussions with the council, I'm aware that that's what they were looking for. In a kind of in a decorative way, those chimneys, they aren't functional. They're a bit like a corbel, if you could put it that way. They're kind of adding a vernacular detail to make it feel grounded.
And just going back for the moment to sort of the detailing and the red brick and the grey tiles and how that is generally representative of the area. Can I just ask you to go to Mr. Lally's main proof of evidence, please? And it's paragraph 4.24 that I'd just like you to take a quick look at.
Sorry, have you got a CD? Because
I don't for most of the evidence, I'm afraid. Let me see if we can find it for you.
It's all right, I can't be.
7.15.
Thank you. And sorry, the section?
It is paragraph 4.24. And it's page 12. It's the sort of second part of the paragraph that goes over onto page 12.
Yeah, starts with tile roof.
Tile roofs, yeah, that's the first couple of words. And then it says, the design and access statement for the proposed development conveys that a brown brick is proposed. And I just wanted to double check a point of clarification. Is it the case that brown brick is proposed for the scheme, Mr. Carr?
I think there's a draft materials layout, or there is a condition as well, should you choose to use it for materials. But there is a materials plan submitted, which highlights where the render are and what the brick types are, and it's a red brick. Let me just find that being the second submission pack. This is just testing my powers of document retrieval, but the plans and documents CD2, just rifling through there. Yeah, materials plan CD 2.25. I'll just let people find out if they need it. So that's CD 2.25, which is a materials plan. So if you choose to use the condition, this would then become a kind of indicative of what you could do. And this has in it red brick 1 and red brick 2. They often leave the final selection. That's perhaps where the condition could go, is to provide a physical brick sample to the council to check that it's the colours that it looks like in the photograph, basically.
I mean, just to sort of complete the point, I think if we could just turn up CD 2.12, which is a letter from Woodall Holmes to the council officers about design. We did go to it a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
And if you could just go to the 4th page.
Yeah, starting with
Minded of
Minded
comments.
comments,
And then you'll see a little itilised heading that says materials, the 3rd one down.
2 variations of red bricks proposed.
Yeah, but just again, what is it that's going on here, Mr. Carr? Is there what's the response to?
I think this is the planning process in its normal way, deciding with the local authority what materials should be chosen.
Yeah. So we moved on from the DAS. We don't have brown brick. We've got red. 2 types.
2 types of red brick.
Because officers asked for it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we got that clarified. Thank you.
Yeah. So, and I think the other thing on my 3 things that help shape the development, the placemaking, a lot of the components for design were not between us. When the reason for refusal came out, at least, were not between us. I won't go through all of them. They're in my main proof of evidence, CD 10, and it's item 5.33. So 5.33 sets out design components that are in common ground between us, which included appearance, which would mean I wouldn't have had to explain to you all the house types. There is more I can say about those if we need to.
Well, just before we go to house types, if I can just pick up on SPD, the SPD for landscape character and design, which we've been to a little bit, and so that's CD 5.4. And you've already told us about the role of the spine road and houses, the levels of houses sort of going up and down, undulating, and that being representative of Derbyshire. But I just want to ask you if you could turn up page 26 for me in terms of, I think your words were, well, the spine road creates character. And I just wanted to understand what the guidance says to us about roads and spine roads and their relationship to character. If you could just help me with that, please.
Yeah. So page 25?
It's page 26. It starts on 25, but I think the bit on roads is actually overleaf, mainly on 26. So you've got a couple of headers in bold, roads, and then spine and arterial roads in particular, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, it should say streets really, but so this is just expressing what you should be looking for when you're designing a street that is inevitably a part of place. There should be entrances to mark where you arrive at development, which we do have here, where we've got that pulling back of the dwellings to the south on the entrance, and that kind of draws you into the scheme through that entrance. And obviously we've touched on that's an improvement to what you see at the moment along Witherston Road. We then move on to, as my PDF jumps around a little bit, move to the spine arterial roads, structuring elements, clear point of reference, and planting to buffer and address the sort of street fronts between the built form and the houses. I mean, that's the other thing. There are landscape treatments that aren't just the trees. There are hedges in front gardens, etc. As you can see on the landscape plans, if we needed to turn them up, we could. To let you see those, but so and then goes on then to access roads and a degree of individuality with focal points as you move through the development, and imaginative planting and features to help enhance the character. I think that just goes to my point about this isn't a tunnel of housing. It is. You see some housing that then narrows a bit as you come in, and then it opens up to a piece of open space, and then you go back to housing again on both sides, and then you come back to another piece of open space. You've got a series of transitional views as you move through the development that creates interest and character. This is by no means bland in the way that you move down that street in any way.
And in terms of what the SPD asks us to do, are we consistent or not consistent?
Yeah, we're consistent with that. We have the character of built form that was agreed between us and the council all addressed. We've got a site that is this shape, and through the middle of it you put your primary point of reference, your primary piece of built form placemaking, which is the street with the houses that address it, with the planting and the trees alongside it. So, and I think the fact that it isn't a through road, you've got to think about the community as well. This is a place where it's not a through road. Those are often the better places for people to feel like they can be safe. They know who lives down there. I think that's often a much maligned sort of character of the scheme. You can sense a bit of that when you're on Acorn Drive. When you walk round there, as many of you might have, you do sense that the people say, well, why are you down here? This is belonging to the people that live here. And I think you get the same kind of nice community feeling on the road. With
that would happen on my street as well. You know who your neighbours are, basically. Yeah,
I think it'll have that feel for it. And that is reflective of adjacent character. If we've got what Acorn Drive has, for good or bad, I think there's it is a feature that you've got there. It's already a characteristic of the area, as Mr. Laley's clearly said. It was agreement that it was cul-de-sac is evident, and I don't think that's something that there's nothing in policy that I see as refusing a cul-de-sac in this format.
Just picking up on that point about it's the adjacent character, and just thinking about the reason for refusal at the moment, for a moment. The reason for refusal talks about positively responding to context and identity of this part of the town. And I just want to ask you about that. So in terms of adjacent character and what you've just explained to us about cul-de-sacs in this part of Ashbourne, well, can you give us your view on whether or not the scheme responds to this part of Ashbourne?
Yeah, it's very deliberate, that, isn't it? It doesn't say this area of Ashbourne, it says this part of town in that reason for refusal, and that's very deliberately saying to me, can we see something that fits into the glove that we've got here? Not just any glove around town, it's got to be this site in this particular location. I also think with the way that roads here run across the contours, not primarily down them very much, so that across the contour is what you see at Acorn Drive, and it's what our scheme would have. So again, I'm coming back to the levels. Inherently, Derbyshire is built into your response to the site. So, but coming back to that point, character of this part of town, and the layout, and they clearly didn't say house types or appearance in that. They said the character of this part of town and the layout. The other thing in that, if I may, without tempted to go on too much, they said town. They didn't say this part of the landscape, town and countryside. And for me, not to open up what has been many days, but from where I was, there's two steps. The first step in looking at your site is, when away from the site, does it play a part of an active role in the public realm appreciation of Ashbourne from the countryside edge? And that's where your LVIA establishes whether you can see the site or not from the public realm. So that was step one, which is in the role of Mr. Jackson and others. So that's LVIA. If the LVIA had told me that there was a wide open, clear view, or more than just the glimpse through a gateway, but if there was a bigger view, then I go to step two, and then that's where my design comes in to engage with that more than negligible countryside impact. That's where your design needs to be part of the mitigation of that impact, and that's where design comes in. So step one, we didn't get past that point because it wasn't a point that was disagreed between us. It was in common ground, effectively, from my perspective, what the landscape visual impact. And the outcome of all those studies are disagreed with from Mr. Laley anyway. So we've kind of pointlessly gone to step 2 when there was no need to go there, in my view.
Thank you. And just in terms of the point that's put about, well, the scheme doesn't reflect or integrate into landscape settings. So it's a point not about views from external to the site. It's not a point about the site impacting on landscape character outside of the site. It's an allegation now of, well, your scheme fails to take into account landscape features or integrate into the landscape. So can I just have your thoughts on that and how you say the design deals with it?
Yeah, I think inherently you've not only got the stepping up and down, which breaks up the roof lines, and you can catch a glimpse of that through the gate. You can see the roof lines stepping up in those visuals that we saw from Mr. Jackson yesterday. And it's not all the buildings facing one way. There's some gables, there's some different roof form. So you've got that kind of developed over time texture that you can see through the glimpse in the gateway. So even the glimpse is looking like it belongs to Ashbourne in my view. You've then also got the open spaces that avoid you having that wall of housing. You've got a step in to no development on one side, then it's development both sides, and then there's a step in again, and then development both sides, and then a step in again, and a large open space. That pushing in and out, a bit like a dog tooth, gives you a texture that helps integrate the development when you see it across a length of development. And interestingly, you do see some backs of gardens already from the Redrow scheme. Nobody mentioned it, and actually you can see them perfectly in Mr. Jackson's photo montage views, the back of the Redrow scheme, on the skyline. Any views and glimpses of gardens will be at a lower level, and we've got tree planting between them. There is a condition as well, because there was mention of security whilst I'm on gardens. The statement of common ground does agree and emphasise that the crime officer has no objections. So just to make that point, in the statement of common ground, item 5.31, it's called something glorious. The police. Do you mind if I just turn that?
Not at all.
Quite right. So that's 5.
So CD 7.4.
Yeah, thank you.
And 5.31.
Yeah. It's
The Force Designing Out Crime Officer. Yeah. It's a great title, that, isn't it?
So that's so there was no concerns about it's not so much the back gardens having timber fences, because that's timber is a kind of soft material, and it's not a wall of timber fence, because in these areas through here, for example, there is no fence, and there is no fence. There is a brick wall in this location and the boundary treatments, and again they are conditioned. In here, this is kind of tucked into the slope, and I think if there was any concern either here or just for this short stretch along here of this being the grassland, just in here, where it has grassland as part of the landscape strategy at the moment, not the scrub planting that you get in this location here and in this location. And in fact, this might even be woodland, I think, on the indicative landscape plan. So there is a pocket in here. It's a place that's primarily for ecology.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just the position of the map in the plan is just so fancy everything.
Okay. I did ask for a display board, but this apparently the cutbacks. But
So would you be able to show me?
yeah. So over here on the landscape strategy, that is already a block planted. It's not grassland, and in my mind that makes it harder to get into. And then over here on this pocket, that's similarly a block of either scrub or woodland planting on the scheme. This is shown as meadow planted with individual trees planted in amongst the meadow. And it says in the landscape strategy that'll be mown once a year. So it's the sort of place you need to have wellies to go to, and it will be very rough for a lot of the year. If it's only being mown once, it'd be hard to get into. But when you do mow it, you would be able to walk into it at that point. So it's whether, under the condition that you've got drafted, you would want to sort of work with the council just to refine that. If there was any concern, clearly the crime officer wasn't concerned, but if there was any concern, you could look at that and or the boundary treatments if you needed to create a bit more visibility. But at the moment, nobody's, until yesterday, mentioned.
Yeah, there was a question from the inspector about whether that had been considered. And just to sort of follow that point up as well, in terms of how those spaces are intended to be used, I think you've already said that it's intended for ecology. So is that intended to be public open space?
No, the public get the benefit of looking at it, but it's not something you'd want to go in and play football in because it's the meadow planting. It's not going to have the surface that you would expect children to be in on a daily basis.
And what's the topography like there?
That's the other reason why it's pulled back. There's a slope. There's also some overshadowing from the trees, which that's sometimes why the gardens have, the size they are and pulled back. But at the moment, that's part of a down slope as you move away from the scheme to get back to grade again at the bottom of the site. So you need a bit of a working area to get back to grade.
Yeah. And just in terms of, I think again there was a question about, well, who are these areas going to? How will they be sort of looked after moving forward? Can you just help us out with that question?
Yeah. I said, so that's proposed for the management company, which is a very well-tested thing in the UK because local authorities don't take the adoption. I'm not telling anybody things that people don't know there, but so the management company would have control of that. And from my experience of those, they even sometimes have somebody from the development on the panel for that. And obviously the people in this scheme will get a regular sort of yearly charge, but also have some buy-in as to what happens with the open space. And they can say something because they're investing in it effectively. And if there was any issue there, it might be a change in the procedure, but some of this clearly has to stay with the ecology focus because that's got a BNG link to it. The scrub planting and the meadow planting, if you did want to put scrub there to stop people coming in, is around the same BNG metric, I believe. And we could give some information on that should we want to know that if you did leave it to the condition that you can move different sorts of landscape typology around. So if you didn't want meadow, you wanted scrub to make sure people didn't go there, you could do that within the metric and still achieve what is conditioned anyway for your B&G requirements.
Thank you for that.
I suspect this sort of debate, sorry to interrupt, this sort of debate will be increasingly more and more of what we do with BNG, with ecology lapping up to the side of where people live a lot more nowadays. So this is sort of BNG in action, really. You've got to deal with how ecology and houses relate to one another. Sorry.
No, not at all. Just moving away then from sort of more green infrastructure, shall we say, into a few more points of detail. Obviously, one of the things that's been said against the scheme by Mr. Lally is, well, firstly, that there's a claim of homogeneity, and then that seems to be referenced to house types. And there's suggestion that the site needs an entirely bespoke design approach. Can I just get your view on that, please?
Yeah, back to the start where appearance wasn't at issue. But taking that to one side, I think Mr. Lally looks at 6 of the types and finds that a Derbyshire-based house builder has similar houses in Derbyshire. I think that's nothing to be worried about. As a proud house builder in the area, you'd expect some movement in those, and then there are only certain ways of doing terraces and semi-detached without being too kind of eccentric or doing a modern glass box idea. I don't think would be part of fitting in and being part of the character of this part of town. So I wouldn't want them to be too eccentric to then leave being what the Regions for Reviews says they would then leave being part of the character of this part of town if they were too eccentric. So there are, while 6 types were looked at by Mr. Lely, I think there's 16 types in total, and they are terraces, semis and detached. I think that's part of that developed over time, linking to that sort of character. It's not a Georgian crescent place, Ashbourne. You wouldn't want the same house lots of times, albeit you do wonder whether somebody would have refused the crescent in Bath because you've got the same house type. But so there is a time and a place for the same house type. This wasn't it, so there is a variety, including the maisonettes, for example, which we could explain if you would like me to, just a little bit more detail on those. But so plenty of different variety in house types, plenty that roots them in the locality in terms of both the detailing and the shape and form of the houses. So it's not only what the window and the multi-panes are, it's a gable one minute, a bay on the next one, a chimney on the next one, a gablet on the next one. That variety, there's a lot of work gone into that with the local authority.
Yes, ma'am. Do you want to go through those in a bit more detail, please, Mr. Carr?
On the house type pack,
So we're going to go to CD 227.
so that's the 3D visual, so 27 you said, didn't say, not 2.
Yeah, CD 227.
Thank you.
I think that's our most up-to-date house type pack.
Yeah. So if everybody's on the front page where I am, the next page is the bungalows, which are, there's 2 of them, I think. So those are in this location here. So that's those 2. And I think that's why in the DAS they referred to, what was it, Holy Lane?
Oh, yeah.
Because if you go, I've forgotten the name now, it's something like Hole Lane, wasn't it? Lady Hole, thank you.
It's page 19 of the DAS.
Big point, but that's, if you go down there is a farm with some single-storey development. And I think that's why in the DAS they went there to look for a typology to reflect a bungalow.
That is actually what the DAS says, isn't it? If we just turn that up for a second on page 19, the left-hand side of the column, that is exactly what the DAS tells us it was going to that for.
Yeah, there's the Lady Hole Farm. I think it's some converted farm buildings, to be honest, but it is a bungalow format. I think that's what they've been going there for. And clearly in the DAS, they don't just have that paragraph. That's not the only place they've been to look. So just to make that point. But so that's the bungalows, and they've got a full hip plus a gable at the front, again sort of animating the roof form. We then go to a let me just zoom in. So you've got a Kedleston type, which I think is a 2-bed, which often sits with another dwelling to partner it. And this is just well-balanced, traditional vernacular with the multi-pane windows. There's the stone headers and sills. There's, the clipped eaves, I think, in the detail there with a brick soldier detail with some brick coins, and the pitched roof. The picture on the porch is what I'm trying to say. The dormer, rather, on the way into the front door with the black door. If you go to Ashbourne, you see the multi-pane windows like that, and stone headers with the red brick, with that pitched roof, and there's quite a decently low, if you could call it, window surface area to the brick surface area. Older dwellings have more wall than windows, so this has got a bit.
Sort of the proportion point.
Yeah. So you wouldn't want too many windows. Typically on some of your simpler terrace forms like this. You then go to the next page, which is the Beale, and that's a corner turner, so it faces to the street in one direction and then to the side with the bay window on the other. again, it takes the multi-pane windows all the way around as well. Sometimes you only see the windows good on the front, not on the back, but this goes all the way around with the multi-pane, which is nice. We then go to the a different sort of deal, which I think we've been at before. We've then got the...
So sorry. So there's two different variations of Beale.
It might be handed and opposite, but let me just check. Actually, no, this is a mid-terrace, so this isn't the one with the bay.
Yeah.
So this sits, or perhaps just if it sits on the end as a double-fronted, it's without the bay, just to give that variety. So you don't get the same Beale every time you get a Beale, if I could put it that way. I've then got another Beale, which is confusing me, but there is a different project code on it, where you've got I think this operates as a semi, possibly as a detached as well, but it's got the gablet roof, which with a splayed voussoir stone header. So underneath the gablet, that little splay that you get is like you'd often see brick splayed, but that's like a stone splay. Again, you've got to go out your way to get that detail right as part of the construction, so that's not a typical detail that you would normally see, with the gablet above that, just to express that symmetry of those two windows up above one another.
So, and just to be clear, the gablet is the bit that does this,
That's what I would call a gablet, that pitch bit on the roof itself.
So you say that that's got to be, you've got to get that right when you're constructing it, so I just give us a bit more information.
Yeah, it was mainly just that stone header to find a way of integrating that into all your modern building regs and making sure that, because there'll be a steel behind there for building regs, and it's to get that detail isn't something that's in a standard construction pack. So, and each one of these houses has probably got an inch thick construction pack that'd have to be redone for this development to do full building regs. Even the weight of that lintel, you've got to worry about that people don't have too much heavy lifting of lintels for the construction design and management regs, so you would have to look at the detailing of that. What we're here today to decide to review isn't the building regs elements of it. Clearly, this is the appearance that we thought was agreed, but just to explain that. And again, that pitched roof on that one. We then go to some flat canopies, which again you could see within Ashbourne, and this probably best to be done on the site visit, because I'm not sure the flat canopies are something you'd see in Redrow. So this is a step up to other areas in the wider Ashbourne area, I'd say.
This is on the Hardwick, where you've got it's basically your little porch over your door, isn't it?
Yeah. Like a kind of Georgian flat canopy, effectively, which goes well with the different door type. I think the black door looks really what you might call smart. It goes with this Victorian, in essence, character for these types, and I'd rather do that than lots of multicoloured, different colours. I think would be a little bit eccentric and it's just a nice, clean, crisp way of doing the door colours. Again, there's some features there that we've seen on the other type, but actually avoiding the gablet on this one I think is nice. It just gives a nice, simple set of proportions there. I'm now worried that I might be boring people going through every house like this, but if this is, do you want to touch on a couple more, or?
Yeah.
So we then got the Trowbridge, and that's got the dormer in the roof as its sort of distinct elements of 2.5-storey development, and again that's room in the roof is something you see within Ashbourne. It's still got a domestic scale, it's not eccentrically high, so I think that would fit in across the street scene, and it's giving some of the other details. I mean, the details that we've talked about, like the stone heads and sills, the multi-pane windows and materials, that the fact that you see those on a lot of the types is a good thing, because that's the continuity that you want. Otherwise it's going to be too schizophrenic, there's too many different things going on, and I think in Ashbourne you do see there's a certain consistency, whilst there's dormers in the roof in 1 minute and then not, but there's still that consistency.
So as I understand it there, you're making a distinction then between homogeneity and consistency.
Yes.
Yeah. You want one but not the other.
Yes, and I think that's sounds a little bit arty, but I think that's what you would expect to have a charm of a place. needs a little bit of consistency to be able for it to feel like they all belong together. So there's some glue between them without them being too eccentrically different as you move from one to the other. I think the 3D views, we probably don't need to turn it up because we've been there before, but CD 2.28 shows the variety of the roof form, but they're all forming a consistent building line as well. So whilst you can have variety within the roof form and variety within the levels as you step up, you've also got a consistent building line. Some consistency here and there in the building line makes them read together. Feels like they've been part of a common street line as they were developed. What we're doing with these schemes, though, is kind of replicating and developed over time that is developed in one stage. So that's the trick, to have that character, that variation brought out. This is the next one we go to, is the Trowbridge V1, which is one of the split levels, and this is on the northern side. So this is in this area. Mark them on. I can't read the house type labels because the plans are too small. Yeah, it's over here. So these are the split levels. So you come in on one floor, and actually your garden level is up at what you might call the first floor. So at the garden level, you get your living room going out onto the garden at the back. So this is completely made for this site. You know, they haven't. There's no. It's just bespoke to the site. A bit. The front to the street has that familiar language that you want to the street, even though it's only one story at the back, effectively. Okay, and then if we keep going, it's the Petworth. Again, a 3-bed, 4-bed actually on this one, and this is paying sort of the tip of the hat to Redrow in my mind, because they've got a lot of half or 2/3 gable. With a bay window on it, and then they push back for the entrance door, and they put a pitch gable on that, a pitch canopy rather, to the front door.
Yeah.
So this is talking a little bit of that Redrow language, but not something that's alien to the area at all. So, but the detailing for the scheme we've got here, that simplicity is more Ashbourne, Derbyshire. I think the Redrow one there's just quite a lot of, it's almost too much render in the Redrow, and they've used other materials as well. So I quite like the simplicity, the 2 bricks and the renders for the key plots on the corners.
Yeah.
So yeah, next one along is the Winster. This is your archetypal kind of farmhouse, as you might call it, or you know, a house within Ashbourne and the outskirts of Ashbourne. I think there's a certain symmetry here, which I think this is the house that my wife would like to buy. You know, that sort of nice balance, something you could be proud of when you bring your parents round.
I have to say that they might be in my group of favourite houses when you have that symmetry in the red brick.
Yeah.
I'm with your wife on that, Mr. Carr.
Yeah. But we're moving to Ashbourne apparently. So, and then.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we've got the Buckingham that also has sort of a double front where you turn around the corner. A little bit of a kind of quirkiness to this on that end gable. I think that's charming. That's actually what you find in Ashbourne. We actually, in a scheme in Melbourne in Derbyshire, which is, I think, on the front cover of South Derbyshire scheme, we did it for Davidson's. We actually actively designed in a little bit of quirkiness, that happy accident. So this is kind of got that quirkiness for me. I'm not sure whether anybody designed that, but that's kind of where I'm. That's part of the charm of a place, really, with that. And then you've got the full gable, another gable as you turn the corner with that type, just to animate, got a bit more texture to the roofscape and the built lines. And then we turn over the page to the Bradwell variant 1. This is split level, and these are a series of dwellings. These with the so the bit that projects out the back of these is the balcony to the first floor, the ground floor. So you come in your front door and you can go all the way out onto a balcony at the back. And interestingly, what this gives you is a view over this open space from a high level. You'll see over into that meadow area that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So out of I think it's your kitchen. I think this is where you put the kitchen, your outside. Let me just check on the footprint. We have to go over again. Actually, it's a living room. The living room goes out onto what I would call the balcony terrace.
Yeah.
And then your family and kitchen room is down on the ground floor, and that goes out onto the garden.
So in terms of those views over, in terms of individual houses integrating into the landscape, what do you draw from that, Mr. Carr?
That these are bolted down to this site, and they're hand in glove with the levels that you've got to deal with here. So yeah, this is definitely made for this place, and it's, you know, a kind of what you might call a kind of it's an integral, but it's an integral that's built into the front of the house, so you can sort of drive in and through to that garage, or drive in. But with the nice black doors on those, I think they look like the old kind of drive-throughs in a traditional kind of market square sort of approach. And again, I think that the multi-pane windows in those just gets a bit of light into the garage and makes it feel like a little bit, it talks to the windows on the house that way around with the garage doors. And at the back, you have got that double level. I think that's a really exciting house to live in, because you've got, you know, lots of different levels, but you've got that outside terrace space and a further family room out to the garden at the back. I think that's a piece of architecture that's somebody spent a bit of time getting that right.
Yeah.
We then move on again to the Westbury, which again, like the Red Rose scheme, it's an integral type, but it's done in a way that gives you that balanced, characterful, lots of things going on this front elevation with the gable coming out, the bay window again, but still keeping a common language for the stone headers, sills and the multi-pane windows and materials. In fact, as I go through them, if you've done too much with the materials, you might have gone too far. It might be just so much going on. It might be a little bit overwhelming. This has got its own bespoke front door as we turn over, to the Liversidge.
Yeah.
Which gives you somewhere to put your wellies in that porch, which is a nice feature. And this is, again, what you might call quite a handsome frontage house type. And this is the chimney that is built into the wall, as it would be on the gable of a traditional building. It's not offset. It's not stuck on as some of the chimneys are. They're often 300 in. They sit in the trusses rather than falling off the end of the house. So this one is built into the wall with the clipped eaves, which, as I said earlier, is something the Red Row scheme that has a lot of boxed eaves, which I think more the clipped eaves is a bit more of a traditional detail. So that's that one.
On clipped eaves, that's where you have the end of the tiles, is it?
Yeah.
Rather than it being boxed in.
Rather than a either wood or UPVC box in bit. So.
So you sort of finish the end of the tiles, essentially.
It's harder work to do it the way that we have here, because you need to have a craftsman, which is hard to find nowadays,
to be neater,
to do it neatly on the edge. You can cover up a lot with boxed-in eaves, effectively. And then we've got, I think the hemlock is down near the entrance. So again, this is quite a grand piece of a grand typology with a double gable in this case, with a central access door. Again, the scale of that, I think it helps to have the double gable because it's quite a deep plan, quite a big house effectively, this one. So this has a certain presence on the way in. I think these are the main houses down here. There's a couple of those on the way in. You could already see, as we're now well into the 16 or so types, there's a lot going on here, and we can keep turning the pages again to the next is the quad block. So the quad block, okay. Now, there's nothing between us until Mr. Laley about living conditions within the dwellings. A statement of common ground I think, had agreed that there was no issue. But notwithstanding that, what you do get with these is an affordable unit with its own front door that's an apartment. And if I was looking for an affordable apartment, this is the one that I would go for if it was a choice thing, because you have your own front door and you've got your own downstairs and upstairs to go into. You've got plenty of windows to the north side and the south side, and I think you've got enough light coming in with those, the same amount of light that you would have in a bedroom or a kitchen with any house that's north facing in any other houses, or any other houses around here or anywhere else in the country. There are rooms that face north in this country. So I don't think that's, if we start to refuse those, where's it going to end, I think is my concern. They do avoid you having to do an apartment with one door. This has got doors like a cottage. So a cottage in a terrace has doors regularly. And we can see that in the 3D views in the CD that we went to yesterday, this booklet for 3D views. So it has the appearance of a terrace, effectively, even though it's got the purpose of apartments, which is quite a clever way of dealing with putting apartments into the scheme, but making them look like cottages, effectively. If there was any problem with the living conditions inside the building regs would say don't do maisonettes that face north. Building regs is for not just construction but the quality of life within a dwelling. So I'm thinking that's it. If it's their campaign against maisonettes, Mr. Laley he's got a big mission to have in the UK, really. There's such a lot of things that we need changing in British building practice to make that come to fruition.
And just moving on to the second type of quad block with the hipped roof.
Yeah, this is, you often see in the Red Rose scheme, they've got the corner turner unit, which has a hip to a gable, which is hipped like this, so that full hip all the way around, and that's, I'm told, what the council officers were asking for to talk to the Red Rose scheme in terms of the roof massing. So, which it does.
Yeah.
And again, this has the same benefit of doors that create some activity on their street edge and doors that make it houses. So you're making the affordable look the same as the private sale houses by giving them front doors.
And just while we're on the issue about affordable houses and whether they're tenure blind, in terms of where these particular quad blocks are located, can I just get your view, Mr. Carr, on whether you consider that to be problematic in any way from a tenure blindness perspective?
No, not at all. It's not the only place that the affordable are, but they've actually got a location that's a lovely place to be. They're on the edge of the open space, both north and south. They've got views out over that open space. In many ways, it's one of the best parts of the site for the affordable units. So I don't think you're going to find anybody when they arrive there thinking that they've got a poor living environment. I think it'd be quite the opposite.
Thank you. And just in terms of the other affordable housing on the site, do you want to just finish off on the couple of extra house types that we've not turned to yet?
Yeah, no, thank you. Again, these have got, as we turn over the page, the two-bed affordable. They've got the flat canopy, similar to what we saw earlier in this house type book for, forget what the type name was now, but if you recall it. So
yes.
We've got the affordable doing the same thing as the private sale with the flat kind of Georgian-inspired canopies. And then we move on to the three-bed affordable over the page, a different canopy type, part of the charm, a little bit of change. Again, this canopy is seen on other types in private sale units. And then we've got the garages with the black doors that come through, which is a nice touch just to link them to the front doors. So that's a tour of the house types I wasn't expecting to do, but that's, if that helps.
Yeah,
That's what
thank you. Anything else that you want to add in respect of house types and the criticism that's been levelled at the scheme?
I think just to reiterate sort of 3 or 4 points, it's just a polite addition to the area, dealing with the shape of the site that you've got, but this isn't just a 2D appreciation of the site, which I think when you look at the plan, that's the only dimension people are appreciating it. You need to see it in 3D, which is why we've been doing the views. And that when you do that, you realise that levels are part of Ashbourne, they're part of this part of town, and the layout and this part of town are hand in glove. So you can't avoid it being part of the character with the levels and the way the levels are addressed on this scheme.
Thank you. And then just to pick up another couple of more detailed points, but I don't think we've got too far to go in terms of what we need to cover now. Mr. Carr, it's been very helpful. So you've touched on it already, but there's a sort of a point being taken about what's said to be a proliferation of close border timber fencing, just to make sure that we get your view on that before I hand you over for cross-examination. Can you just help us with your position as to whether that's the case?
Yeah, it's probably best just to turn up the boundary treatments plan, which is called enclosures. It's 2.26.
2.26.
And I'll wait for people to get to that.
Yeah.
The key, usefully, it shows you an elevation of what the boundary treatment would be. There are two sorts of timber fence. There's what you might say is a fence between houses, which is a certain 1.8 close board fence, and then we've got the 1.8 high brick screen wall. I'm colourblind, so I'm hoping the colours are clear, but I think the brick screen wall, makes me good as a designer, is in yellow. So if you zoom into the middle of the scheme, plot 80 and 17, you can see that where we come through on... It's green, okay, thanks. The green highlighted boundary wall is deliberately done in a brick wall where it addresses that public realm on the street. But where you've got the rural edges, they've kept it timber. And I think the timber on the rural edge, when I say rural, I mean the peripheral meadow and other open space, the wooded areas, etc. I think because they're more natural, I kind of find that the timber is probably the best material to use there. There's no point in putting in using up the earth's resources to put a big foundation and brick wall when it's a rural edge. I think the softer timber's better approach, but it's not just the timber. They've used the brick wall, is what I'm explaining, in key locations on the street side where there is that kind of urban feel as you go down the main street. I think that then, so it's just to put in perspective that this isn't wall to wall. When you go down the street, you're not going to be seeing, lots of timber fences. This isn't what's going to be a characteristic of the scheme from its main public realm. Timber fences wouldn't be what's characterised the main public realm on this scheme.
Sorry, in terms of what is said in Mr. Lally's proof, there's 2 points that follow from this. Firstly, there's a suggestion at paragraph 4.29 of Mr. Lally's proof and paragraph 2.8 of his rebuttal that there are either green open spaces or public open spaces on which development turns its back. So that's point one. But then, sort of, as part of the same point, Mr. Lally says, well, planting, back to the timber fences point, back to the planting can soften the edges, but then he says the designs here have none of the subtlety. We have hard edges. Can I just get your view on both those points, please?
Yes, I think the southern edge has, particularly at the western end, a lot going on there that is houses that turn to overlook the ecology area. particularly, probably best of a point to it, but
Yeah.
over here you've got houses that turn the corner to overlook this pocket of ecology. There's a hedge to define it. Similarly in this location. So this isn't, and in between these we do have a timber fence, but it's a short stretch on what you might call a more landscaped edge, so hence the timber's probably more appropriate in my view. You then have, again, the end of these units, so you haven't got the back gardens in this location, only just the central area between the two. You do run to the back gardens, but this is where, in my view, it's an ecology focus. So
Yeah.
there would be a visual amenity where you would have the upstairs windows that would look over it. You've got the enjoyment of open space at the back of your house, but it's not something that's a key space like this one here. If we put a timber fence all the way around here, that might have been a strange thing to do.
That's your play area.
That's the
Yeah.
play area.
Yeah.
So again, you want to keep that little space as a that interacts with your primary public realm, which is the street through the middle of the scheme.
Yeah.
So the secondary and ecology focus areas aren't your primary public realm.
Yeah.
So you don't need to clad those in lots of heavy-handed brick walls.
No, but and if you're using the fences though in that sort of area, I mean, will there be hard edges or soft edges?
Yeah, I mean, if you're using the timber, that's a softer material, and depending on how you do your planting, they might be, certainly there's already intermittent tree planting all the way down the southern edge and to the north. So you're going to see those as part of an edge to the landscape setting. And you already have some of that people didn't even notice on the Red Rose scheme, to be honest. That this area here was in all the views yesterday. Nobody's really noticed it. This sits on a high level. Ours are tucked into the slope, so these timber fences do sit with the slope rising up behind them, and these have the A52 tree-lined edge with the open space between them, which is again the ecology space. I think that's the distinction. There's open space with a visual amenity, but it's mainly meant for ecology, not for people to be kicking a ball around in it. I think that's the distinction here.
Yeah.
And as I've come to earlier, that's a thing in the B&G world we've got to get our head round as part of the design.
Mm-hmm. And then just so in terms of the turning on backs on public spaces, can you just give your view on that, please?
Yeah, again, it comes back to my point about is this your main public space? It's a space where it's a habitat focus. You'd want to just, in many ways, you don't really want people in there as part of that, just to let the ecology do what the ecology wants to do. You've given people places, the play area, and the open space is primarily related to the main street through the development, where they would be mown and where they would be maintained for people to go and have recreation and kick a ball around or enjoy the play area, etc. So I've kind of lost what the question was now, but if that was answering it. So there's a different role in the open space. Not all open space, not all the green is meant to perform the same function on this scheme. I think that's been a point of confusion.
Yeah, understood. Okay. Moving away from that then, and let's just pick up the point about street trees. You've already touched on it to some extent, but can you just give us your view on what you think paragraph 136 of the MPPF means, and whether or not you consider the appeal scheme responds well to that guidance?
Yes.
Or policy, I should say.
It does respond well to that. It does have trees on one side or the other. And I've referred to earlier, I don't want an avenue because I think that would be a characteristic, that wouldn't be part of the character of this part of town. But I won't go over it again, but there are, I think when you look down the street, your overall impression of trees is going to be very prominent and be dominant. A lot of them will line up because you've got a curve in the street, you're going to see the trees, not just in one dimension, you're going to see them curving around the street. That gentle curve will help you see those trees.
So just in terms of that perception, is there a difference between perceiving trees and what is tree lined, and whether or not you actually need trees all the way down at regular spacing to achieve that?
Yes, you don't need trees all the way down there to feel like you've got a verdant street. I think this is more than enough trees to make it feel verdant and green. And as I say, where you've got a curve in the road, such as where we go through the open space, where you've got two trees, if they're in a straight line, they're a line. On a curve, you actually see more of the trees because they reveal themselves. As you go round the curve, you'll be able to see more of the trees as they come round. That's a subtle point. That's like icing on the cake for the amount of trees that we've got planted down this street. I also think it's quite useful to have the tree-lined definition, because it very deliberately.
This is the definition that's been put in today. Is it? Is this the? Well, we think it's the OED. I think Mr. Hunter was waiting to confirm that, but so I think this needs an IQ number, ma'am. I'm not sure. Is it IQ 9? Yeah. Please do carry on, Mr. Carroll.
I mean, that's very useful. It says on either side, which we have on either side. And what it doesn't say in the MPPF is avenue. So if you look at the definition of avenue, which I did earlier, it says trees on both sides. So if they meant trees on both sides, they should have said avenue, not tree lined. And then you can go to the MPPF itself, because there's a footnote. So it's MPPF, I think it's para 136, and there's a footnote 53. It says planning policies for housing. See if I've got the right one. Yeah, it says unless, so this is saying, talking about trees, unless in specific cases there are clear, justifiable, compelling reasons why this would be inappropriate. So even if somebody was to view tree-lined as definitely trees on both sides, which in my view, it would have said avenue if it meant that. But even if you do think that, your 53 footnote says my compelling reason is it wouldn't fit in with the character of Ashbourne. So you thought you had to do trees as an avenue, which you don't. The compelling reason is you want to feel part of the character of this part of town. We're not doing the Champs-Élysées, basically.
Oh, Mark, we've just taken all the fun. Can't help himself. So away from, so just in terms of how this development then does relate, or deals with street trees, can I ask you to just turn up quickly CD 2.38, please?
Yeah. 2.
See, I might now have to put it in a footnote, ma'am, just to make you laugh.
You said, sorry, 2.3?
If you can find 2.38, it's an email from the appellant to the council.
Yeah, got that.
You've got that, okay. And if I just towards it's the bottom of the first page, top of the second page, it goes over leaf, and you'll see that it talks about residential layout to create soft landscape, trees, and then it talks about carefully sited trees along the street to provide visual interest, and then carries on down to say comparatively informal street design to be framed and enriched by trees and hedgerows. Just do you agree or not agree with what that email describes as the scheme?
Yeah, I think that we're on the same page with my view of the scheme and what they were talking about there. So.
And in terms of the informality, if it were an avenue, or it were the case that we had to provide street trees at regular intervals all the way down each side of the road, how would you say that would fit with the informality that's trying to be achieved here?
Yeah, I think that would be alien to that informality, and it'd be alien to this part of town, which is what we're after here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
So we've dealt, I think, mainly with the segregation of affordable housing, I think, Mr. Carr, but just a couple of points. I think you've touched on north-facing, but I think there are another few points that are picked up about private open space, a suggestion of car dominance, no attempt at placemaking, designed to a noticeably lower standard, pared back, and then there is an allegation about sunlight, ventilation, etc. Firstly, is there any objective evidence about internal space or sunlight or ventilation standards?
No, and again, common ground, I think there's agreement between us on those.
In your opinion, is the design pared back?
No, it's got everything that it needs to be part of the character of this part of town. And I think that is a balance. You don't want to make it overwhelmingly complex, but you do need to keep a little bit of the simplicity of the vernacular going on in that design approach. So I think the balance is right there. There's enough variety within a consistent theme.
To what extent are you concerned about, in terms of the quad block in particular, about possibility of car dominance in the layout?
No, I think that's such a small block in that discrete area within its setting, within the scheme. You're not going to see an overwhelming number of cars all in one area, and it's agreed as common ground that the parking approach isn't something that's between us and the council.
And then finally, there's a comment about energy inefficient design. And again, let's just go to the SOCG on that, because I think it's paragraph 5.33. And that's CD 7.4.
Yeah, got that. So 5.33, proposed developments acceptable.
Yeah, so how does this criticism sit with what's been agreed in the SOCG? 5.33.
CD 7.4, 5.33, energy sustainability heading?
Yes, yeah.
It says dwellings have been orientated such that they provide maximum solar gain, and dwellings will meet building regulation requirements regarding energy and water efficiency.
So just in terms of energy inefficient design, how does that criticism sit with what's been agreed in the SOCG?
Well, I think everybody up to that point had agreed that the energy and sustainability was all it ever needed to be. So that was agreed and shouldn't really be in front of the inquiry. Shouldn't be needing to do this, basically, this bit. And it's not as though the planning stage is the be-all and end-all of that, because you've got to get through building regs, and that's got the new regs for FL, O and S. It includes overheating within dwellings. All that is for another headache for Woodall, I'm afraid.
For all developers, yeah.
So that's out with the planning system.
Yeah. And then I think from my perspective, just a final point, Mr. Lally's rebuttal, if you could go to paragraph 2.9, please. But what that tells us is that Mr. Lally was making a point about the southerly face of the town. I'm just going to actually turn it up. Have you got that in front of you?
I have, yeah, I've got 2.9.
Yeah. So just to orientate ourselves first. So we're told there's the strategic important edge of the settlement point, which I'm not going to go over because we've dealt with it with Mr. Jackson. But then we're told that it's about the development presenting to the southerly face of the town, and about being seen from an important route into the town, or the south of the town. Were you able to understand what part of the southern face of the town or the route to the south of the town was being referred to there?
Well, it says south or southerly 3 times. Development presenting faces sometimes. I think this was to the wider countryside, but I think this obviously came before we'd actually been out to Witherston Road and found that there was nothing but a glimpse through a field gate.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything between us in terms of the immediate south of the site now. I think we're agreed between us and the council that we will provide a better fair face in that particular location. So I won't go any further on that point. In terms of anything else that you want to draw attention to, Mr. Carr, is there anything else that you'd like to address the inquiry on before I hand you over to Cross?
Yeah, I think just one overall point is, if you look at the site as it is at the moment, it feels like it is a trapped field. It's kind of the last piece in the jigsaw for what would have been normally a comprehensive master plan for the area. So I think this is one way of finishing the jigsaw with the right piece, if I could put it that way. I might have taken the analogy one step too far there with jigsaws, but...
That's Mr. Carr's evidence in chief completed, ma'am.
Just one thing, well, 2 things. First of all, that's actually inquiry document 10.
Ah, yeah.
Just one question, Mr. Carr. So the north of the development adjoins public open space that's part of the Red Row development.
Yeah.
Is there going to be any sort of boundary treatment between the two?
There isn't on the boundary treatment plan, but there is some pockets of landscape. I think there might be a hedge that's on the Red Row side. So, yeah, I'd need to just turn up the landscaping, but there's nothing. It's a soft edge in terms of the boundary treatment, and in many places you could just walk between the two, I believe.
Right. So there's a hedge existing that the Red Row side.
Yeah, just in this
Control.
location, I think there is a hedge that's gone in there.
Oh, okay. What about the other bit? Up near the pond,
It's
yeah.
an open boundary across the other areas, and there's a fence. There is a fence to the pond at the moment.
Around the pond?
Yeah, I think it's like a post and wire from memory.
Sort of a metal one, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. So the intention is to leave it as it is it? To sort of keep it open?
I think it is, yes, just to keep that open. There's nothing that we've been asked to do, even though the boundary treatments are still under a condition. Nobody's asked for us to create a discernible boundary there.
You're not planning to either?
No.
Okay, so although it looks like there are these unusual spaces, they're actually part of a bigger thing and trying to bring it together.
They would read as one space, I think, in actual fact.
Because I was looking at the same area on Google Maps, so I don't know if you mind me just asking to clarify the area speaking to, because I've got it on here. Is it, when you're talking about the play area first of all, that's the Red Row play area?
So that one is at the top of here. So that little beige you can see is the one that you've got.
I think I'm going to have to go round again, sorry. Maybe try to.
So I think that's just a lap. So that's the lower end of play areas for children. So that's in that location there. And then when you stand there, you can't see down here because it falls away.
Yeah.
So, but if you walk down here, you can begin to see this open area, and then that would then have some more surveillance from the proposed development to the south. So you end up with a triangle of open space that's lower at this end and higher at this end.
Okay.
And that comes all the way up and through Acorn Drive.
Thank you.
Presumably, just looking at the house types and so on, where those split levels are to the south of the new access road, that the land must drop away quite steeply there.
It does, yeah.
And then where we've got the split levels on the north side, it must be going up.
Yeah, it's a little bit of cut and fill because where the road is, even though it comes in and then drops down, but the road has to be flat. So your slope can't slope where the road is. So you've got to get back that bit of lost slope at on the right and the left. So you're sort of cutting a little bit and then having a little bit of fill to allow you to create the sort of platform for the housing. So, and you can see that going on out there actually. There's a landscaped level change, which is what we would have here.
But should we have a brief adjournment before we do that?
A comfort break would be very much appreciated. Thank you, Mark.
Ask for a 15-minute break because there's been quite a lot of evidence in chief that's new, basically. So I just wanted to see if I can incorporate that into my questioning.
Yeah.
Might take me a few minutes.
20 past then?
Thank you.
Okay.
So, Mr. Carr, you're not officially in PERDA, but I think the new sort of guidance suggests that we probably best not chat.
Solitary confinement, and it may well stretch over lunch depending on how we go. So,
But if you'd like us to get you a drink, just let us know. You're good.
So are we adjourned? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready then, Mr Hunter.
Thank you. Still morning. Good morning, Mr. Carr.
Morning.
Mr. Carr, can I pick up, because I think it will be the most sensible way of dealing with it, is to try and pick up a few issues from your examination in chief before I go into the cross-examination I had prepared, just to see whether there are any issues that we need to look at a little bit further and come back to. First of all, if I just go through them in order, you said at the start of examination in chief, as you referred to having the benefit of the open space from the Redrow scheme, and finding a way of addressing it. So are we agreed that it's actually an important part of the design of the scheme that it should address Redrow and the open space between the appeal site and Redrow properly?
It was not addressing all of that Redrow landscape, but having some links to it, particularly where there was a play area and that triangle of open space. So
okay.
It's a caveated yes, where the important pieces of the linkages should be made, then we can do it.
Okay, that was it. There's three things then. I was going to park this, but this is the issue that's causing me concern. You also referred to links through to the play area, and so what you were talking about is connectivity between the appeal site and the play area on the Redrow site.
A visual connection up and through and across the open space. There's no footpath through there. That's
okay. So we're just talking visual links, or physical or functional links.
I think you could walk through there in summer, but you haven't got a path. So in winter, you might need to wear your wellies to go through that.
Okay. The open space on the Redrow site is presumably in the hands of a management company.
I presume so, but I don't know that for a fact. I'm happy to take that assumption, yeah.
The appeal, one of the key issues in this case is connectivity and accessibility. And it is, I haven't made a question, yeah, but one of the key issues in the case is connectivity and accessibility. I've not noted it anywhere being said that there is connectivity or access available through the Redrow site.
So if it helps at all, just to clarify what the appellant's case is, and I think Mr. Carr did give the answer of, yes, I'm talking about visual connectivity. That's what's being talked about, visual connectivity, not making physical links.
I'm sorry, the witness just said you could walk through there in the summer, but you might need your wellies. So he is talking about walking through there. It's not just being...
I'm trying to help you by clarifying the appellant's case. We're talking about visual connectivity. I'm
grateful for your help, but I'd like to ask this witness to confirm the position, please. You're not suggesting, or are you suggesting or not, that there is connectivity in access terms between the Redrow site and the appeal site?
No, the council haven't asked for that, and we've not provided that. I've merely got an informal ability to walk between the two because there's no secure boundary, there's not a big fence between us.
Well, there's the informal ability to walk onto Premier Drive as well, but there's a landowner who says he would object to it.
There's an individual landowner there, not a manco, so that's a different thing.
Yeah. So, well, if the residents... What I would like to understand is, if it were possible to provide a pedestrian link from the appeal site to Redrow, whether that has been explored by the appellant, and if it has been explored, why it isn't shown on the plans?
Well, it didn't need to be explored because the council asked for it. We're not appeal about anything to do with a link through that area. So I imagine everybody must have been as content as I am that if there is the occasional walk across some grass, that's perfectly acceptable.
Well, it would be a trespass, wouldn't it, without the permission of the management company? I'm sorry, please, there's been so many facial gestures and it's becoming very difficult to ignore. Could you ensure of that?
That is really quite unfair given what we've had from the other side over the last 24 hours. And, it is difficult. And, of course, we will try. But this isn't a one-sided situation. And I don't particularly...
I will do the same then. I will do that. I apologise for that's how I put it. But if it could be limited, that would be great. But sorry, going back.
Just to make the point, do let Mr Hunter put his case, because he's only just begun.
Of course, I was trying to be helpful and not trying to interrupt.
Okay. So I think where we've got to, I'm going to come back to the ramifications of it, because I don't accept what you said there, that this is not a live issue in the case. But you are not suggesting that the inspector should determine the appeal on the basis that there is pedestrian accessibility through the Redgrove site?
No, there's never been a reliance upon that. There's never been, as I understand it, a request for that. And if somebody needed it in the local authority, then it would have been potentially part of the...
There is Mr Lally proof which says this, and also Mr Carey's proof, which says that the site is really poor in terms of accessibility and connectivity. It's not a well-connected place, isn't there?
That connectivity, I think, is a wider sense of accessible facilities. Obviously, the link to the west was removed as a point between us. There was no need for that. This is purely a kind of passive recreation where you might have one piece of open space next door to another that you might walk into. I think that's not a pivotal item to a case for connectivity. That's just a custom and practice that might happen.
Okay. I've got a series of questions on that, so I'll come back to it later. Can I just understand the factual basis, though, on which I'm going to ask those questions? Has your client approached Redrow or the management company, whoever has control of that land, to inquire as to the possibility of connections between the appeal site and that site?
Not to my knowledge, no. They wouldn't need to. I've walked on that piece of open space and nobody told me to get off their land. It's quite different to a piece of land that would, to the adjoining development. This is, whilst it might be a management company, it's still a management company of a piece of open space area.
Okay.
It's quite different. It's quite different to the end of a piece of road.
Legally, there is no difference. It is private land owned by a third party whose consent is required to go upon it.
If somebody had an issue with it and people weren't allowed to walk on it, I'm not reliant upon it as part of the approvability of the scheme. I'm happy to just have a visual relationship and some natural surveillance of it, even if it's for other people's recreational benefit. You've still got that benefit. So.
Okay, can I ask, so when you said, I'm not aware that my client has had any conversations with Redrow, that could mean one of two things at least. It could mean I have discussed this with my client and I believe, as far as I'm aware, having discussed it with my client, my understanding is they haven't done anything, or I haven't discussed it with my client, so I just don't know at all. Which one of those is it?
I haven't discussed it with the client.
Okay, so you don't know. The answer is I don't know.
Yeah, like I say, okay. As I said, I don't know, basically.
Okay, thank you for that. Could I go then to the other parts of your examination, Chief, I wanted to ask about? You said also that the appellant hasn't been greedy with the development area, which we can see because the number of dwellings have been reduced, the developed site area has been reduced. That was at the instigation of the Planning Authority and the Higher Authority because they were concerned about development at the western end in both ecological and accessibility terms, weren't they?
Yes, there are things that we now know about the site that meant that it was logical to readdress the scale of the development.
And
but
that
you've
was
still got to make efficient use of land. You know,
so I'm sorry to cut across it. And the essential nature of them were ecological concerns and accessibility concerns.
Primarily ecological, as I understand it.
Okay, and we'll come back to that then. Thank you. Okay, could I ask you to you talked about the 3D visualizations and the public realm trees. Would you be able to take that up, please? Core document CD 2.28.
Yes. So that's the 3D visuals pack.
Yeah.
Like that.
And I think you had us at view 8 or B. Or perhaps I was.
I didn't actually go to the.
I'm sorry. That was it. I'm looking at. I've written 8, and I think it was B. I'm sorry. Which of you were you looking at again?
I looked at A, B, and C that was in my appendices.
I beg your pardon. Thank you.
710A.
Yeah, I've mixed that up. Thank you, Phil. So if we go to those then, please.
Yeah. So which view? A, B, C?
It was B that you were looking at in particular, I think, when this point arose. And you commented, you asked about it was related to the tree line question, and you said there are 46 trees along the spine road. Is that right? Did I get that down right?
Yes, there's still a condition for the landscaping if you need it, but 47 by my count.
Okay. And you said, I think, that those were trees that would be within the public realm that would be adopted by the management company.
Yes.
Okay.
There might be 1-2 trees that are in the highway land. You've got a tree there that is in highway land, so I'm happy to take that caveat.
Okay.
I think the trees that are in the pinch points have to be adopted by the highway authority, so they'll have a commuted sum, typically £1,500, something like that, to look after them.
Yeah. And the highway authority can be, or hopefully can be adjusted. But could you go to the adoptable areas plan, please, which is 2.3, I think. Is it? No, I think it's 2.3, isn't it? No, I may be using a superseded version, but I thought.
Yeah, 2.3.
2.3.
Superseded.
Oh, I'm sorry.
2.24 is the
Thank you.
up-to-date one.
Sorry. If we go to that then.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
tree that we have in the key, the yellow areas are residential areas to be conveyed. So those are the privately owned areas, yeah?
Yeah.
Blue is highway for adoption.
Yeah.
M is, not M, green is managed. I appreciate, so you have difficulty with colours, so please tell me.
It's pretty close. That yellow and the green is pretty close, but I
Yeah.
think I can just see it.
Anyway, you can, as long as you can distinguish, I don't know whether you can.
I can distinguish.
You can distinguish the difference, okay.
The key thing is putting the trees, say plot 81 in the middle there. The trees that are on the street side are in the put into the management company, so they're not in private ownership, basically.
So, because as I understand it, the highway will be adopted, that will be the carriageway, and sorry, if you just let me finish, the carriageway and the footways, and then immediately adjacent to those are the boundaries of the privately conveyed residential area. The yellow, we have boundary between yellow and blue, and then we have some areas of green. Sorry, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, the dark green, it's not great ink line, the dark green areas show that some of those frontages go into the management company, so that what you would have, in pre-tree line street worlds, we would have probably given those over to the individual properties, but in our new world of making sure that the owners don't remove those, we put them into the Manco.
Okay, but
Actually, I mean, people like Berkeley Homes do that to keep the front gardens tidy for future purchases as it happens, but this is a way of managing it in the long term for those trees to be not in private ownership, so you make sure the trees are kept.
okay. So could you go then to the visualisations as well, please? 2.28.
Sure.
I can find them again now. I have a lot of documents open. Yeah. Which view is it? 7. So could you look at view 7 first? Yes, please. And the property on the right, the tree on the right, the first tree we see on the right, in the foreground, that appears to be within the garden of that plot.
Likewise for all.
Yeah. And then similarly in other ones, is that just inaccurate, or is the management company going to own the people's front gardens?
Yeah.
They're going to own people's front gardens.
That strip at the front, that's what happens.
Okay.
Yeah, that's quite a common thing now. It's a thing that is asked all around the country now, just to make sure they're in public ownership. So that's plot 23, I think, by eye from the layout. And you'll see plot 23's got a dark green strip with the hedge. That's why the hedge is set slightly back. Allows you displays out the driveways. But
Okay, so it will appear to be in somebody's front garden, but it will be adopted by the management company.
yeah, So when you buy that house, you know that you haven't bought that, and it's typically explained at point of purchase that that tree will be not in their ownership.
Yeah. But you said 23, I think, didn't you? So I'm sorry to flip around, but if we go back to the adoptable areas plan, that appears to be yellow with no blue insert.
It shouldn't be blue.
Oh,
It should be green.
I
and
beg
then
your pardon.
yellow.
I beg your pardon. You're quite right. I can't see a green insert there. I can see only yellow. So
I might have to ask somebody with colour vision, but I see that as
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know it's.
Can I assist with the house with colour? Is that?
Yeah.
Here, the placement.
That area there, I think,
on
is
the
in.
street side, in the visualisation. The placement on the tree is on the other side of the hedge.
I'm sorry. Just a second. I've just realised something.
Yes, it's dark green.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And I think I've realised the issue. This is a change between the plans. There is a change between the plans. So this was something that wasn't in the original plans and is now gone into the current plan.
Yeah, and I took Mr. Lally to it yesterday.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, well, I'll leave that there for the moment and I'll come back to it if I need to. Thank you. The next point I wanted to pick up, you said the tiles proposed for the dwellings will replicate the blue tiles characteristic of the area referred to in the landscape
Blue clay, I think it's called.
yeah, the Derbyshire document. Where do we see that detail? Where is it in the plans or the design and access statement? Because the only references I can see are to grey tiles.
It's the grey tiles in the materials is basically, if you look at the aerial view, you can see it here. These aren't Staffordshire blue tiles, as in the original handmade, probably blue clay tiles.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't be able to afford a house in Ashbourne if they were, I suspect. These are what happens to the Shropshire blue clay tile. It goes more of a grey. So, despite the word blue, it's not a blue, it's more of a grey blue. And that grey tile that is shown on the layout is consistent with the grey that you'd see. In fact, it keeps going, doesn't it? You can see that a grey tile is a thing of this area. So it's back to the reason for reviews, it's part of the character of this town.
Okay.
The exact manufacture of that is still in the gift of the local authority to keep an eye on, because the sample could be brought in under condition.
I do, sorry. There is a materials plan. It says grey tiles on it, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
So my question was, you said it's going to replicate the Staffordshire blue tile, but where do I see that? Where does that say? Is that just what you are now proposing, or is it in the document somewhere?
As in, what you were looking for was a piece of paper that says...
Yeah, is it just what you think should happen when the authority discharges the materials condition, or is it something I can see was taken into account in the design?
Well, it's on the proposed materials plan, so that's a point of reference, clearly. And I've just shown you at inquiry how much of the roofs around here have a grey. You can see it in front of you. So I think those two things, so apologies if it's not absolutely explained in every inch, but obviously appearance and materials aren't something that were originally part of the refusal.
No, I'm just trying to understand. So, I'm sorry to be persistent about it, but my question was, the evidence that you gave that this is going to replicate the Staffordshire blue tile, that isn't on the, first of all, it isn't on the materials plan, is it? It just says grey tiles. So it's not, what you've said isn't in the grey tile. I'm not saying it may be possible for the authority to exercise its powers if permission is granted under the conditions, materials condition, to require that. So I'm not arguing with you about that, but I'm just saying, is there anywhere I can see in the documents that this was part of the designer's approach and thinking, or is it just your thinking, having come here to review the case?
I think that whilst whilst it might, I can't think of anything that it is in already before my evidence today. So all I can say is the only reference that you should take of it at this inquiry is my earlier reference to it in evidence.
So,
So
I
I'm
think
happy to take that you're right. It might not be written anywhere
This
yet.
is your thinking about what should be done when conditional discharge.
This is me talking about it today on the back of what Mr. Laley's referred to, but and a general awareness that I had before about the Shropshire blue clay tile being prevalent in the area.
Okay, so
it's verbal evidence that you've got the evidence, basically.
Okay, so you agree with Mr. Laley, it's prevalent and it's... So I'm saying I'm doing it now. So it's Lally. I got checked. No, it's fine. I'm sure. Well, I'll not take offence on his behalf. So you agree with Mr. Lally. It's prevalent and is something from which the development should, if permitted, take inspiration. And you say that can be done through the discharge of conditions. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But you're not saying you can point to anywhere in the documents that shows it was taken into account in the design of the proposals.
I can't offhand. No, there are a lot of paperwork, so I'm happy to take the point as a no. I can't find anywhere in there instantly.
Okay, thank you. Can I again? These will just help with the main part of cross-examination. Ecological, what you call the ecological areas. So these are. Can we turn to the layout plan, please? CD 2.23.
Yeah. Which is the same layout, but without the context as the plan next to me.
Yeah.
Are you happy that I use the plan next to me for the purpose?
I'm happy with that. Just when we're talking about the ecological areas, I just want to be clear which ones we mean. You referred to the Green Heart as the biggest one of them, and that, as I understand, is the larger area, well, the area at the western end of the site, near Premier Avenue.
Yeah, probably the clearest thing, if I think right, to look at for a start is CD 2.29. So that's the general arrangement with for the landscape.
Yeah.
For the landscape work, I think it's called the structural landscape and on plot. So that's CD 2.29, and on the key for that, there are symbols that explain what the green hatches and the green with a kind of marsh, grassy symbol within it.
Yeah.
So the kind of tufty symbol within it is keyed into the meadow planting.
Yeah.
And that has a B&G role, whereas the plain green without the tuft of grass in it is normal amenity grassland. That's where the play area is, and also where we're against that triangle piece of land adjacent to Red Road, for example.
And then in the key as well, I think the sort of dotted land beneath that, the green is diagonal.
There's a diagonal hatch
going
two ways.
Turf.
Yeah, one of them one way is the woodland and the other is the scrub woodland.
Yeah.
And then there are hedgerows and individual trees and planted beds within the other categories.
Okay. So,
sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, the question was the Green Heart, the ecological areas. The first one, the one you specifically mentioned, was the Green Heart, which I understood to be the area to the west.
Yeah, it's the area over here. That's what's referred to, and that the Green Heart comes from the design access statement. So we're just using the term that it's been called in that.
Yeah. And the other things that you're referring to as ecological area include the areas to the rear of 61 to 68. Start with, yeah.
61, yes, that's to the north. This is where the slope will bank up.
Yeah.
And it's in this area here. On this indicative layout, it's got trees planted in it. And on the landscape proposals, it's got a peripheral edge of tree planting, so that.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the proposed general arrangement plan, it hasn't got trees in it. That might be something you wanted to refine, working under the condition, if the council thought there was some trees in there.
Okay, so
they're good for B&G.
So all of this, in short, all of the land shown as proposed meadow grassland between the dwellings and the boundaries of the site, that is what you were referring to in evidence as the ecological areas?
It's a meadow that would be mown once a year. That's what it's keyed in as under the...
Okay.
It explains that in the text on the left.
Okay.
So all of this wasn't questioned by anybody in terms of its landscape treatment, and that's, again, this is all either here indicatively and by condition to be finally resolved. So if there's any concerns with this, there's room yet for the council to have full control of this.
Okay. You said, I think in your evidence in chief, they are therefore primarily to look at for the residents.
There's a visual amenity side to it. I'm only just thinking from the practicalities of, I mean, our lawn at home, we've let go to meadow for the most part. So it's, and there is a mown path through it, but it is primarily an ecology function, and it's a visual amenity of being able to enjoy it. So if I was to go for any more formal recreation, I'd look to the play area, because that's a mown amenity grassland area. So.
But it's also been put forward as informal open space for the benefit of residents, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. And because it's grassland, you could still go for a walk across it, but it's more informal, not a formal play area per se.
So it is intended to be usable for recreational purposes by residents, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. You could go for a walk in it if you wanted to.
Thank you.
There's nothing between us, though, on the role of the open space, because these plans have been in evidence for some time now and submitted as part of the application. There isn't a refusal on terms of open space usage or anything like that.
No, but Mr. Lally obviously gives evidence and raises concerns about the relationship between the built development and the open space.
Sure.
So I need to understand. I think we agree that. Can I just ask you to turn up then the design and access statement on this page? So it's core document 1.24.
Yeah, I've got the document.
Yes, it's when you have that, it's page 5, I think, paragraph.
Is that?
No, sorry, I beg your pardon. Sorry, page 53.
As in actual, not in PDF.
In the numbering that is in the document, internal document numbering, not the PDF. It's actually the same, but.
Great. I'm sorry, it was 53. Did you say? Sorry, I missed.
53. Yes.
Thanks.
So there's a heading: turning corners and creating vistas, and then safety and security. It says there under safety and security, the perimeter block formation defined across the proposed layout ensures front doors address the street and rear gardens are secure and private. It also allows homes to be arranged to overlook areas of open space and the pedestrian network, providing natural surveillance and making people feel safe. So the intention was that the open space areas should be overlooked.
Yes, there is overlooking from either where those are ground and first floor where you don't have a garden fence, and then you've got some properties and some of the open space areas will have surveillance from the upper floors, so you won't see through the fence at the ground floor at the back.
Okay. I'll come back to these points in a bit more depth later. You also made a comment about, in response to Mr. Lally's criticism of the proliferation of close-bordered timber fencing, and you said this isn't going to be a feature of a view from the viewable public realm, but if what you've just agreed is right, it will be, because it will be viewable from the informal open space, which the public are entitled to use for recreation.
Yeah, I did explain that in chief. This is the primary street, the place that people are going more often on a daily basis is the main street through the scheme.
Yeah, okay.
And that's where you would be having all the brick walls, because it's got more of an urban Ashbourne feel about it. I think the rural areas, if you were in the open space, you will be seeing the rear fences, the timber fences, when you're out in what I might call the meadow areas that we've just looked at on the plan. Subject to where you put the tree planting, there might be under the condition, the council might think it's a bit more, and they might prefer to put the scrub and woodland planting adjoining some of the back garden fences, which would keep people away from the fences, and it would also buffer the fences. But that's in the gift of the council still.
It's not shown on the plans at the moment, is it?
It's not shown on the plans, no.
Thank you. Okay. Read that. Thank you. Last point then. There was the one you were asked right at the end. Is there anything you'd like to add? And you said, you reiterated the point that you made in your main proof. This, you say, is a kind of trap field, a piece in the jigsaw. Yeah, the last piece in the jigsaw, you said, yeah?
Yeah.
Following that analogy, which I think is quite apt actually, can we agree this is a matter of principle? Even if that's right, which I'm not accepting it is, but even if that's right, what it implies, isn't it, that you need to find the right jigsaw piece to fit in. It has to, you don't just shove any old piece, it has to be one that fits.
Yeah, you don't want a piece of sky in the middle of you.
And that's exactly the same with the development. So merely saying, well, this is a field that is in principle acceptable for development, in my view, doesn't mean that you can do any old thing with the design of it. You've still got to design it appropriately and well in order to fit it in properly. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that's what I've explained earlier on through how the scheme's shaped and formed.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Those are all the questions I have at the moment about your examination in chief. Can I just now ask where I was going to start with your involvement in this? I mean, it's been clear. You say in your proof at 2.2, you're instructed to review the council's design concerns after the decision to refuse. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
So, it's clear. I don't need to say it, but it's clear. You're not the scheme architect.
No, I'm not.
You weren't responsible for the design and access statement?
No.
And can I understand this? Did you have any prior involvement prior to the refusal, or is all your involvement with this case post-refusal?
It's post-refusal. From January onwards, I've been involved with the case. Before I took the case, I did have a look at what the issues were to see if I would be able to help. There have been cases where I have said I couldn't help because I didn't support the case. So this one I'm comfortable with.
Okay. And the same with Mr. Lally said. I mean, you're in the same position as Mr. Lally coming to it after the decision, yeah?
Yes. Okay.
And did you go to you said you satisfied yourself that you could present the case quite properly. Did you go to site before you satisfied yourself of that?
No, I used Google for that bit, but before I did my evidence, clearly I've been to the site proper.
Okay. So no site visit before you satisfied yourself on a desktop basis?
I did, yes, it was a desktop view of that. Luckily, the Google views are quite explanatory for it. Plus I had all the material that was submitted with the application, etc.
Okay.
The topography.
Did you go to site before you wrote your proof?
Yes.
Okay. Can we agree the following general principles from national policy? And for this purpose, you may as well take up MPPF so we're clear which bit we're referring to. I'm hoping this will all be uncontroversial. We'll trot through it very quickly, but just to make sure. So if you have CD 5.5 and go to the design section starting with paragraph 131, we can agree, can't we, that creating high quality, beautiful, sustainable places is fundamental to the planning process?
Yes, and there's a lot more beautiful in the new MPPF than there ever was. It's 13 now, but beautiful could do with a definition. I'd like to think it means working beautifully, not just looking beautiful, but this is getting into my, you don't need to.
Everybody gets very vexed about that. I don't have any questions for you about that topic. Good design is key to sustainable development, yeah?
Yeah.
That means it's essential.
Yes.
Okay, same message being sent. Can we just also agree as well, moving down to paragraph 134, there's a discussion of design guides and codes, reference to the National Design Guide and National Model Design Code. Can we agree? It tells us that if there isn't any local design guide or code, we should be relying on the national. Guide and Code?
Yes, the National Model Design Code is a bit of a, here we go again, this is not beyond the case, but it's actually an instruction book as to how local authorities should make their own design codes for their regional codes.
But you're quite right, but the last sentence says these national documents should be used to guide decisions on applications in the absence of locally produced design guides or design codes. So very much like the MPPF in a way, if you haven't got an up-to-date local plan, you're forced to rely on the MPPF policies. Same way with the National Design Guide and Code, if there isn't a locally produced one that conforms with the MPPF policy, the National Code and Guide are what this inspector should use to help her determine the design issues.
Yeah, and it's got things in there that like walking distances on page 20, the NDG says 800 metre radius, so that's as the crow flies to facilities, for example. That's quite a statement from the National Design Guide in terms of accessibility, but there are things in there that you can go to if there's nothing locally. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And there are a series of then specific criteria on what planning decisions as well as policies should ensure at 135. I'm not going to go through those in detail, but what I just wanted to get your agreement. These are criteria which all developments, so far as relevant, should satisfy.
Yes. Yeah, confirm with that.
Thank you. Tree line policy routes, I'll come back to that. We just noted as a policy, and I'll come back to that. In terms of, and then 139, we're told at the end, development that isn't well designed should be refused, especially if it fails to reflect local design policies and government guidance on design, taking into account other relevant matters, supplementary documents and so on and so forth. The upshot of that is, if the inspector considers that the proposal is not well designed, particularly if there is identified conflict with local plan or neighbourhood plan policies or the National Design Guide or National Model Design Code, she should refuse permission.
There's a planning balance to be had. Obviously, that's why the planning witnesses are here. But yes, that's
from a design perspective, it's a reason for refusal.
From a design perspective, it's what you've just said there. What we've just taken me to as the text. So
thank you.
That's fine.
Okay. Can I then turn to your proof and pick up ask you some questions about the contents of your main proof? So the first section I wanted to ask you about starts on on paragraph 3.3.
And is this the main proof? Yeah.
Yeah. To start with. 3.3. So topographically, the site is sloping to various degrees, broadly dropping from the northern boundary to the south towards the A52. Just to perhaps be a bit pernickety, but a bit more precise about it. There is generally a slope from the northeast to the southwest.
Yeah, from Wyeston Road, it does that's slightly higher, and then you drop down from there. So there isn't just a fall from north to south broadly. There's also a drop down from Wyeston Road and then into the site.
And we can see that. I think there's a topographical plan, which I've now lost the reference to, is I think in section 1 of the core documents.
1.22.
Thank you. It's one of the documents that closed shortly before I started asking you questions, so I had to reopen them.
It's in 2 sections, but yeah.
Maybe in a different one I was looking at. No, it's 1. Sorry, did you say 1.21?
1.22 and probably 1.
1.21's a bit easier to see because
it's got everything in one go.
It's everything in one go, so we can see the point.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to know while we're here, because it will save time later on, that there is the access road or the spine road doesn't simply follow a particular contour, does it? It cuts across the contours, and hence there is a slope within the road. I think you said that yourself.
I did.
And so I think we can see at the point of the site access that the spot level is something like around 165, 166. There are obviously different levels, something in that order.
Yeah, just above 165, yeah.
And then at the western end of the site, roughly where the Spine Road terminates, I think it's about 145-ish. Is that right?
Depends how the cut and fill works, but I think it's in between 145 and 147.
Okay.
It's probably around 146, I imagine.
Thank
This
you.
is the old levels with the original submission. That's
Yeah.
the topography on the site is your reference, which is just the topography on the site, so fine.
Yeah.
I was just referring back to the original levels drawings on those two other subsequent 122 and 123s. That's the old scheme levels.
Okay, I find it, yeah, I don't think it, oh yeah, we can. Yeah, it doesn't, yeah, okay, well, if you need to, we can come back to that later. Thank you.
So from 145 to about 146, whilst you might go obliquely across the contours, you're broadly ending up at about the same level at the entrance and at the far end. But
Okay, my point is that the road doesn't simply follow the contours of the hill. It doesn't go around. It goes up and down.
it goes obliquely across them. So yeah, happy to say that qualification.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say it follows the works with the landform and not against the natural contours, it's with that qualification. It's not. We shouldn't misunderstand that as means it follows them precisely. You mean there is a broad. You're saying broadly. You think it traces the contours.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy to take that qualification rather than running up and down obliquely
It's
for
not
the main road.
a road up
But
the hill.
it's not exactly in line with the contours.
Thank you. Could you go to your 3.8, please?
Yeah, got that.
You say there, from plan view, the site is viewed in the context of existing development and infrastructure on all sides. And you say the A52 is the defensible and in design terms read as the southern boundary to Ashbourne. First of all, you're not saying anything there about the actual view of the site from any particular viewpoint. You're just talking about plan form. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I start, is the plan view, viewed in the context of existing development.
It's clear that in actual visual terms, the edge of the settlement, where it can be perceived, is perceived as Acorn Drive, isn't it? It's not. No one would read the edge of the settlement as the A52 at present.
No, you would have the field that's there at the moment before you get to the A52, if that's your point. I wouldn't.
So if I was looking at from any of the viewpoints that we see in the, from the golf club, from the field gate on Wiston Road, if I'm looking at it from, even from within Acorn Drive itself, I would read the edge of the settlement as being Acorn Drive, wouldn't I? Not the A52 in this location.
As it stands at the moment, but that's not my point. My point is, as I say here, the A52 is the defensible in design terms, read as southern boundary. I think if you look over the page, onto page 6.
Of your proof?
Yes. And there's plate 2 and 3 for that matter. You can see the recent development when read in plan form, particularly to the east of our site, has used the A52 as the boundary to the edge of Ashbourne.
I don't think there's any disagreement. Mr. Larry was asked the question, is the A52 a defensible boundary, and he agreed. So I'm not disagreeing with you. The question is, what do you read as the edge of the settlement at the moment, either in plan form or actually on the ground? And what I'm putting to you is, I think you agreed, on the ground, you read the edge of the settlement as being Acorn Drive in this location. But I'm putting to you that actually, even in plan form, that's what reads as the edge of the settlement now. And that's a different question from whether the A52 is a defensible boundary. Do you accept that?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Thank you. Okay. Now, can I just ask you, you've raised this, because I want to come back to it later. You referred to the development to the east of Wyreston Road, which we can see in your aerial imagery. And just to explain things better, we've got, first of all, not on the opposite side of the road. So if we look at your plate 5, 2022, the most up-to-date one.
Yeah.
We've got opposite the Red Road development, there is a road going into a series of routes. It's hard to heading to Tutbury Hollow is what I'm referring to. Do you know where I mean when I refer to Tutbury Hollow?
Ooh, I have got.
So it's the first road on your right as you come up under the A62. So you pass the site entrance.
Under the A52, yeah.
So can I?
Yeah,
I don't know what Tutbury Hollow is. I don't know if you do, Ma'am.
Oh, yeah.
Is that road through there?
It's the first road on your right as you go in, as you come along northbound on Wyreston Road, past the appeal site. There's the first right. Yeah, that estate there.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
That's Tutbury Hollow.
And on we can see there's a belt of trees. There is some open green land between Tutbury Hollow and some development to the southeast. Yeah. So there's a kind of triangular wedge of development to the east of the site, which is adjacent to the A52.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you mean this piece of open space here onto?
I can't see what you pointed to, but sorry.
Yeah, Daveport Drive, I think it is.
Davenport Drive and Harlow Way, I think it is.
Yeah.
Davenport Drive and Harlow Way. Yeah, so I just want to identify that. So those are recent developments, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. And you've relied on them for saying, well, look, this is another example of Davenport Drive and Harlow Way have been were formerly fields and have been filled in. But the appeal site is analogous to them in that respect. Yeah. You say that's what you appeared to be just saying.
Yeah, it's part of the outward peripheral growth of Ashbourne.
It's also, and it's also, there is a similar issue there, isn't there? Because you have the development to the northwest, then you have the intervening open space, and then you have development to the southwest. And if this appeal proposal is approved, we will have Acorn Drive to the north, the appeal site to the south with some intervening open space, part of it within the appeal site, part of it within the Red Road development. Yeah.
There is that. I mean, the levels are a bit different over there. It's basically just a flatter area there.
Yeah, and it's so you're familiar with it. You'll know then that the dwellings on both sides of that green area predominantly face the green area. They address it front on.
They don't to the north. Cedar Close backs onto it.
Yeah, is that part of the new development or an older development?
That was, I don't know what the age on that development is. There are parts of it that front onto it, like we front onto it's the Moan open space that runs down there, and it's got some play areas within it.
And there are footpaths connecting the two areas, aren't there?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to put to you, and again we can come back to it, but the relationship of the new development there to that open space and to the other development on the other side of the open space is very different to the relationship that will exist if planning permission is granted here. It's much more connected, and the dwellings predominantly face into the open space.
I think if you went there, you'd find.
Sorry, is this a bit new?
No, the witness has drawn attention to this piece of land to draw an analogy to say, this is one piece of the jigsaw that's been filled in. That's the other piece of the jigsaw that's been filled in. I'm pointing out we can see that we should note the differences between what happened on that piece of land as well as any similarities. So I think it's
my evidence actually put it in there not to do that role, but to say, as I've said on plate 5, can be seen to provide a consistent.
No, I know you want to use it for one purpose, but you can't cherry pick. If we're going to compare it, we have to look at the differences as well as the similarities.
I didn't see this in Mr. Lally's proof.
No, but Mum, the witness has just taken me to this to say this is similar to the appeal site. Mum, and the witness has also been asked lots of questions this morning which weren't in his proof either. Well, I think that, Mum, if we could go back, the questions about the connectivity between the pedestrian permeability between the Redrow site and the appeal site.
I did not ask a question about pedestrian connectivity, Matt Burn.
Well, the witness, sorry, you're quite right. My learned friend didn't ask a question about the witness gave evidence about that. There may have been some other bits.
Mostly my take, I think that came from me, and I was more interested about whether there'd visually be a fence between the two,
Yeah.
or whether, because what I was concerned about was these awkward spaces being fenced in, creating small places, with a fence and then another fence. That's what I was talking about, not connectivity. So I don't know if that's been misinterpreted.
Okay, well, that's right. But regardless, the reason I'm asking the question, as I said, it's quite clearly part of Mr. Carr's written evidence and his oral evidence to draw a comparison between the appeal site and this area to the east, to say the development we are proposing here is akin to what has already occurred over there. It is therefore, I think, a legitimate question for me to ask in cross-examination whether he agrees there are also material differences between the way the development is integrated into its surroundings in that location.
The only thing I would say is I wasn't aware this was contested. Whilst there might be things in Mr. Carr's proof, I would expect to see in Mr. Lally's proof these sorts of things.
Okay, but yeah.
But I'm happy to let you finish the
Thank
point
you.
if you just take the point from me as well.
No, I do understand, but yeah, I mean, not everything can be responded to, but yeah. So could I just ask that question then? Do you agree that the interface between the development on both sides of this green area to the east and its connectivity are not going to be comparable to those on the appeal site and its relationship to the open space and Oakham Drive beyond?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Harlow Way, and there isn't evidence for people to know where I am, but I think you know where I am. Further up this green link here is Harlow Way, and there's a narrow green space that runs along here, and just like our development, there is development on the south side that overlooks a piece of green space, and there's development on the south side that overlooks a piece of green space with a play area in it. So Harlow Drive has houses, road, play area, open space, just like we do.
Yeah.
It doesn't keep going all the way down because we've got areas of topography that are higher and lower, and there's no design guide in Ashbourne or master plan for the area that says this is a distinct green link through the heart of the development. You don't need that green link, and if we were to have that, there's no evidence or requirement for it. So
Okay.
you're taking me to a design scenario that can't be, that is a completely different place, and it probably expresses why our design is different because ours fits our site. So
Okay,
that usefully helps me actually.
Well, okay, you may think so, but the point, so you agree there is a difference, but you said there's an underlying difference between the two sites, which is why it's different.
You need to tailor your approach to the site topography, which is what they did and what we are doing.
Okay, so we agree as a matter of fact that generally the dwellings on the north side of the Spine Road in this development will back onto rather than face the open space between Acorn Drive and the appeal site and Acorn Drive itself, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, I will come back to that then, thanks. Yes, could you go to your paragraph 414, please?
Sorry, but before we go there, I really don't want to make unhelpful procedural points, but I am at a loss as to how I can deal with this in re-examination when I don't have the information in front of me. and it wasn't addressed with Mr. Lally or in his evidence. I'm not trying to make a big proof, but I am being put at a disadvantage, ma'am.
Well-
I'll just make that point and move on.
Thank you.
Deal with it. I've just put a note that I'm going to look at the development in Harlow Drive when I do my site visit.
Harlow Way.
Harlow Way.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's,
So I will look at the surrounding area. Again, I will be conscious that if it puts anyone at a disadvantage, I will address
I'm
it.
grateful. I'm grateful. Thank you.
thank you. So 414, sorry, Mr. Cowles, just bear with me a minute. I seem to have crashed a PDF. I beg your pardon, I'm sorry, that's it. I was giving the wrong reference as well. 6.7. You refer there to the proposal seeking to locate residential development adjacent to existing residential development. The parcel of land, can I just understand when you refer there to parcel of land, that's the appeal site? Is it?
Yes.
So the proposals, the parcel means the appeal proposals, the parcel of land means the appeal site, continues to the southern extent of Ashbourne whilst maintaining a landscape buffer to the A52. So can I just understand this? Because Mr. Lally's case is, he says it's his 414, sorry, that was his reference, I misquoted. He says the site functions as a green buffer foregrounding the edge of the town with an attractive landscape of woodlands and fields. You accept that there is a landscape buffer. I'm just wanting to be clear, do you accept that that is, the appeal site provides a landscape buffer currently to the A52?
I think just to clarify, my landscape buffer is the trees along the A52.
I thought it might be, yeah.
That's my main landscape buffer in my mind, not the open land beyond it, actually the appeal site. So yeah, just to clarify that.
Okay, but the appeal site forms part of the landscape itself, agreed?
It's an open area of land at the moment. I think in here, the maintaining that I refer to a landscape buffer is the planting along the A52.
Yeah. But I have to put Mr. Lally's case to you. The appeal site as a whole, as well as the planting to the...
There's no need for more buffer.
That's not my question. You have to wait for the question. The appeal site is a landscape buffer in the wider sense of landscape, not just meaning landscaping, but the actual land itself. It functions as a buffer between the bulk development to the north on Lakeland Drive and the A52 to the south.
So what's the land doing at the moment? It's not been given a policy to be a buffer, so it hasn't been given that job in the role of Ashbourne to be left open. Are
the trees designated formally for that status either? The planting that you refer to?
Along the A52, no.
So is formal status fatal to it being a landscape buffer? Right.
No, I'm just putting it in perspective.
Okay.
I'm not trying to elevate the role of a field into a role that sounds bigger than it actually is, if I can put it that way.
But I'm just saying that if it functions in sort of design terms as a landscape buffer in that broader sense, it's not a fair description.
I think my buffer is the kind of, because the A52 is there, we want to make sure we don't see the A52 from the development, and the landscape strip alongside the A52 does that. So that's what I'm buffering. I'm buffering the A52. I'm not buffering the wider landscape. I don't have back to my 2 steps in a design process, the LVIA hasn't identified that there is a a landscape and visual impact from the land to the south from any form of public rail mount there, apart from that gate view. So the buffer's primarily in design terms to separate the people who live here from the A52. So that's where the trees do that.
We agreed, which is why I asked you a moment ago whether you agreed that that you remember we said there's no dispute the A52 is a defensible boundary, but that's different from saying it's the edge of the settlement. And then you agreed that actually both in plan form and on the ground, we agree that the edge of the settlement is read as the edge of the Red Road development at the moment. Therefore the question is, what is between that and the A52? As a matter of fact, that is the appeal site and the trees along the south.
Yeah,
both
that's
of them.
a long way around of saying there's a piece of field between Redrow and the A52.
And it's fair to say that buffers the edge of the settlement from the road.
Yeah, I don't think Redrow needed buffering.
I didn't say whether it needed to. Whether it does or not, I'll come back to. It's a matter of fact, it functions in design terms as a buffer.
I think if you called it a buffer, it has to have that job. I don't think it has that job at the moment.
Okay, let's
it's
come
got
back
the job
to
of the field at the moment.
Okay.
I kind of feel like it is semantics, but
Do you know why Red Road didn't develop further down their appeal site, their site?
I don't for sure.
Okay.
I presume a land ownership issue.
Well, I think don't they own to the boundary with the appeal
I
site?
honestly don't know. This is
Okay.
just me speculating. I want to say.
If the inspector accepts Mr. Ali's position on the buffer, it's inevitable that the development on the appeal site will substantially erode that buffer. I appreciate you not willing to go as far as call it a buffer, but on the premise that Mr. Ali's evidence accepted, substantial erosion of that buffer.
You've taken a leap of faith there, aren't you? But I think if development, if that's prescribed as a buffer, it should already have been in policy as a buffer, which it isn't clearly. So taking a pretext, this is taking me into such a dream world. I'm not sure how many other elements.
Poetry.
As in, you're saying there's a number of predetermined yeses that I don't agree
There's
with.
one predetermined yes. There's one. It's not a massive. I don't know what the quality of dreams.
Built development on it would change its current character, so it will no longer be a field. I'd say.
It will if it's a buffer, it will no longer, the appeal site will no longer act as a buffer. There's still the trees acting as a buffer, but if the appeal site is a buffer, as Mr. Lally says, that will no longer perform that function.
Yeah, I suppose it depends who you're buffering, really. If it's Redrow, it's still a gap between, it's probably an even more discernible gap between Redrow and the A52. So
Okay.
so
start again.
To be green to be that.
Start again, because I think this is irrefutable logically. The question is, what buffers the edge of the settlement and the A52? Mr. Lally's case is, it is the appeal site and the trees along the A52.
Yeah.
Your case is, it is that it is the trees alone. I'm parking that issue because you've not agreed with me on that. But if Mr. Lally is right, it inexorably follows from the fact of the proposed development that the buffer will be substantially eroded. Mr. Lally's buffer will be substantially eroded. It's not really, I don't really see how you can dispute that.
If Mr. Lally's right, then yes, his buffer will be eroded. But Mr. Lally's on his own because everybody else to the east has used the A52 as the boundary.
There's a different question, Mr. Carr, whether it's a defensible boundary and what is the edge of the settlement and what is between the edge of the settlement and that boundary, another matter. Okay, thank you. Can I ask you this in connection with that, though? What will be, again, really, it would really help without the sounds and facial gestures. It just makes it a lot more painful to cross-examine with it.
Well, I understand that, Mr. Hunter, but it's painful to try and follow what's happening at the moment from my perspective. But let's just be clear. During Mr. Carr's examination in chief, and I didn't complain about it, yourself and Mr. Lally were speaking together the entire way through that, and I was able to just carry on. So
I didn't laugh at anything you said.
Listen, it is distracting and I know, but if anybody was doing that, I would find it distracting when the public do it. So I sympathise. So
I'm trying that.
okay,
Thank you.
let's just listen respectfully and give everyone a fair hearing.
Thank you. Okay, so when in the hypothetical world, so I'm asking you to take another hypothetical yes, permission is granted, appeal is allowed, the development is consented. There will then, the open space, I think you just said it now as well, the open space will buffer the two developments, Acorn Drive and the appeal site. There will be a landscape buffer between the two.
There'll be the areas that you can see on the plan. Some of those belong to the open space belonging to the Red Row scheme at the moment, so that those will still be there. So these areas around here are there and already covered under the planning permission that belongs to Acorn Drive. So I'm just trying to think, is your issue of, in relation to the RFR, if you don't mind me asking, where does this relate to?
The RF, sorry.
The reason for refusal. So.
We're going into the assimilation of the development into its landscape setting and whether it's a good relationship or a bad relationship, which is Mr. Lally's evidence. But both of you have used the concept of a landscape buffer. Okay, and so I think it's legitimate for me again to ask you about it. I'm just you can answer yes or no or say you have no opinion on it. Do you think that the open space between the Red Row development and the appeal site would be read as a landscape buffer?
In terms of, in my perspective, the buffer is to the A52 because that's where there's a lot of traffic movement and the visual sort of interruption of the A52. So that's what I'm buffering.
Okay.
I don't need to buffer in design terms some adjacent residential development, either from our scheme to the Red Row one or vice versa.
Okay.
That's purely open space in between development. I wouldn't call that it's not performing a buffer because it's not protecting either one from one another. There's no need for a buffer there.
Okay.
It's just an intervening landscape.
Okay, thank you for that. Could I ask you to take up Mr. Jackson's rebuttal notes or his second rebuttal, depending on how you want to describe it, and just look at viewpoints C to start with.
Just before we do that, Miss Hunter, I'm just wondering if it's a good point to break because it's been about a 3-hour morning.
It has.
So I'm just wondering if it would help everyone just to sort of regroup.
It may
finish,
be.
yeah.
There is. Yeah. Could I just finish off this question and then I will find the appropriate point. So, if I just ask you to take up Mr. Jackson's, probably while you've got it as well, if you take up the LVA, which is what's called document, I think 138.
Yeah.
I just want to look at the viewpoints, and my questions are all going to be.
I've not got Mr. Jackson's
Okay.
on the links that I've got because it's recent evidence. It's not gone on to the.
Okay. Well, if I think you've been past it.
Thank you. Thanks.
If you've got that, then could you turn to Mr. Jackson's, I think, viewpoint C. It's 3 images, the current image, the wireframe, and I thought 4 images, sorry. There's the wireframe and then there's the 240 montages.
Yeah.
And I think, as it's been pointed out, we don't have photo charges for the other views, so we just have to try and imagine it from other views. But
I don't think there are any other views identified. We went out, not myself.
No, there are all the viewpoints in the LVIA, for example, from the golf course and the access road to the golf course. So there are other viewpoints, but there's no photo montages illustrating the development in the view.
Okay. Yep.
So that's why I'm starting with this. But what I was going to put to you is the edge road development will still read as the edge of the settlement, won't it? In this view, at least.
I think you can catch a glimpse of development below the Red Road development.
So
I think already see development over to the left on Premier Drive as well. So I don't. It's such a narrow view, and you're in a realm of. You're in the countryside, so this is Mr. Jackson's place, if I could put it that way, for LVIA at stage 1 of whether it's an important public realm to get a view from that has any impact.
I see my question's focused. I'm not going to reopen LVIA issues. I just want, just in design terms, where are we going to read the edge of the settlement? I'd just like to know what your position is on that. From this viewpoint, will it read as Redrow or the appeal site as forming the edge of the settlement?
In this viewpoint, will it read? I don't think you can tell where the edge of the settlement is. It's such a small view through a gap in a hedgerow. That's my honest answer. I don't think you can see enough of Ashbourne to work out.
Isn't that a
where
problem
an edge
in
is.
design terms that you can't read the edge of the settlement? Isn't, you've got a kind of confusion about what the edge of the settlement is there.
If I'm walking down this road, I don't think I need to all of a sudden try and interpolate where the edge of Ashbourne is.
Okay.
This is such a kind of strange way of looking at the importance of how I appreciate. It's such a narrow view. I'd need to read more to understand it. But
isn't it? You say it's such a weird way of looking at it, but the local plan policy tells us we have to pay particular attention to edge of settlement sites, doesn't it?
Yes, but I'm thinking this is such a narrow view, is what I'm saying. This particular viewpoint.
Okay, and I took it because, as I said, this is the only one that we've got.
Just to explain about it, the strangeness or the weirdness about it is that this is all of a sudden becoming the predeterminant view of somebody's establishing where the edge of Ashbourne is. It's just such a small
this is an edge of settlement location. That is agreed, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
It's agreed that local policy requires particular attention to be given to assimilation into the landscape in this location.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It still doesn't change what I've said.
Okay. You're saying this is one view, and I can't really tell where the edge of the settlement is from this view. Could I ask you to take up the LVA, please?
Sure.
So that's called document 1.38.
Yeah, got that.
Okay. So, can you go, when you have that, to viewpoints 6 and 7 from the golf club? We've got the difficulty that we don't have photo montages to precisely see it and be certain about. But I think we might
imagine if it had been an issue, we would have been able to prepare those.
I'm not asking for photo montages. I'm not criticising you for not producing them. I'm just noting the fact that we haven't got them to assist us. But what I just wanted to put to you, what we can say even without the benefit of those is that what we will be able to, or what people will be able to see from this viewpoint, is at least some of the development. Yeah, there's no dispute about that. In fact, that's why the LVIA says that there's a major, then reducing to moderate adverse impact. Yeah.
As you can see, some development with housing on Premier Avenue.
Yeah, again, but I'm going to say, the components of the view here are going to be Premier Avenue to the left, the Acorn Drive above the appeal site. Then there's going to be the open space, the slope of the open space, and then there's going to be something of the appeal site.
Yeah, I think what I need to just stop here is entering into what I've said earlier is part 1 of how do you approach a site. You get an expert to tell you where the important landscape viewpoints are and what the significance
It's
of the
been
impact will
identified
be.
as one. This is in the landscape and visual impact assessment. It is an important view meriting assessment, isn't it?
And this is private land without footpaths running through it.
And I'm not, Mr. Carr, you can rest assured, I'm not going to try and ask you to unpick the landscape and visual assessment. That's not the point of my question. My question is just to put it to you, because I'm going to advance a positive case on this, so I have to put it to you. How would you read the edge of the settlement there? Would it be the appeal site or the Red Road development, or again, not sure?
I think I can see the alignment of the A52, and if I was walking through that area, I would have a map, and I'd know that the A52 was there. So I know there's an urbanising influence on the lower part of the valley. I could probably hear the cars. So I'm aware that there's a road there. I'd probably think there was a development site in the waiting in the foreground between Redrow and the road, because it's slightly unkempt. This is just my honest answer. It looks like a potential development field, and it's consistent with Premier Avenue to the east, with development that I can see runs up to the A52 at that point. But I'm already out here trespassing because I shouldn't be here in the first place. But
maybe there's lax about it as a management company. I don't know. Okay, so you're saying my knowledge of the position of the A52 would lead me to read the A52 being the edge of the settlement?
It's just my honest answer.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not qualified in terms of LVIA.
I mean, it's not an LVIA question, it's just like as an urban design witness, how would you read the edge of the settlement?
Yeah.
And I think you're saying my background knowledge here would tell me the A52 is the edge of the settlement, is what you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd know
So
there's a road
not
out
what you
here.
can actually see, but what your knowledge is.
It's part of what you know on the map that's probably helping you find your way around when you're trespassing, or you might have paid for a golf course round, I suppose.
Yeah.
And there is an urbanising influence. The built form, you see, I don't know whether that area of green belonged to the open space with the Red Road development. It doesn't have a label on it from when I'm looking at it from across the valley, so it's hard to know whether it's part of the settlement or not.
Thank you, Mum, that's a convenient point, thank you.
And an estimate just on after lunch? Okay, all right. So about another hour. Okay. Okay.
Don't say it's a criticism, but my letter friend, it was 1.5 hours in chief, and so a good time was spent on matters.
I'm not saying anything about that. I'm just having a quick look at the timetable. Right, so if we... Yeah, we can probably start with our examination in chief of Mr. Bowl this afternoon, once we've completed cross-examination.
I can't remember, the estimate was it an hour and a half for cross-examination?
Yes, so that would take us to 2:45 if everything runs according to plan after examination chief. So an hour and a half after that would be 3:45. Yeah, we could
Possibly get cross-examination. Yeah.
Okay.
Just on that point, sorry, there is a question about the note that we've been asked to prepare and whether that impacts or shortens or deals with any issues. And certainly the reason we've done it is because I thought that we might be able to avoid some parts. So it might be useful to at least look at that before I go near cross. Because there's no point in going over stuff that I don't need to go over.
We'll just take it as it comes. Yep. Right, let's adjourn for lunch then. So if we come back at 1:45, does that work for everyone? Yep.
So can I just ask, can myself and Mr. Hunter just have a word with you separately, Ma'am?
Yeah, of course.